passed. I mean P-A-S-S-E-D, passed. A few housekeeping rules this evening. Just let you know that the washrooms are out that door, which is a good thing. Down the hallway to the very end, you'll have male and female washrooms down there for your use. Also, could I ask you to please make sure your cell phones are switched off at this time? We would hate to interrupt some presentations here tonight. I'd like to start off by thanking Pastor Gord Freilich and his leadership for making Destiny Worship Center available to us and for coordinating the audio visual for us tonight. Can we put our hands together for Gord and his church? And as we continue this evening, I'd ask you all to stand. And this is a real good time for you to say hi to your neighbor next to you, either side of you or you behind you, and introduce yourself to them and tell them it's really good they would come out tonight. You may be seated. Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge a special guest this evening who is with us. Please take a bow. Councillor Cheryl Armstrong. We are honored to have Lynn Ross and Paul Jordan, the founders of BC Town Halls 2024, with us tonight. Paul and Lynn brought the Town Hall initiative to British Columbia for the purpose of bringing citizens together to be informed about the bills being passed by our provincial government without our knowledge or consent. Please stand up and take a bow, Lynn and Paul. Please visit this website, bctownhalls2024.ca, for more information on other topics of interest, upcoming events, and how you can get involved. You will also see more information about our Nanaimo Town Hall at nanaimotownhall.ca, nanaimotownhall.ca. We have excellent speakers tonight that will inform and educate us on some of the most important legal and health issues our province is facing from this government legislation. We thank you for joining us for this most important and first Nanaimo Town Hall meeting. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. There will be a question and answer time following the speeches and video presentations, where you are invited to submit written questions on relevant topics to the speakers. Cards will be provided at the end of each presentation for you to write your questions. This is a very important part of the town hall as we encourage your involvement as citizens of Nanaimo, BC. You will also be given an opportunity at the end of the meeting tonight to mix and mingle with one another. So, with no further ado, I will turn the floor over to our most venerable moderator, Frank Pluter, to kick off tonight's town hall. Frank.
Great to see everybody out here tonight, and I want to thank you and congratulate you on making it out here. I realize the Canucks are playing tonight, and we hope to post the play-by-play right here on the screen as a score. But after some people threatened to leave, we decided not to do that. Is that okay? Okay. No score. Hasn't 0-0. That's right. My name is Frank Luda. I've been in Nanaimo for many years, at least the last 20, but off and on before that. And I've watched Nanaimo grow significantly over that time. And more recently, seen how it's struggled with the many issues that are going on. Some come from a higher place, such as federal, provincial, but it doesn't stop us working locally here to fight that. Let me ask you, is there anyone here that's had trouble getting a doctor or proper medical services? Okay, that's like 3/4 of the people. That's great. Not so great. Sarcasm. And is anyone worried that if the government declared an emergency, they could actually seize your house and your property? Anybody worried about that? And some don't even care. Okay, that's good. But when they come knocking on your door, that's when everything changes. Well, folks, you're in the right place. And before the night is over, we want you to learn new information and actually ask questions. That's what this is about tonight. It's a town hall, the old-fashioned style. To give perspective and gratitude for all of you who came out tonight, I want to share something back from the 40s, when the world was in turbulence amidst a world war, a chaotic time, not too dissimilar from the past few years that we've gone through. It's from a war correspondent that was married to, of all people, Ernest Hemingway for a few years. Her name is Martha Gellhorn. Once married to Ernest Hemingway, Martha Ellis Gellhorn was an American novelist, travel writer, and daring journalist who is considered one of the great war correspondents of the 20th century. Gellhorn reported on virtually every major world conflict that took place during her 60-year career. Now you're saying, what he's talking about? Here's what she said, and this is really important, and this goes to all of you here. People often say with pride, I'm not interested in politics. They may as well say, I'm not interested in my standard of living, my health, my job, my rights, my freedoms, my future, or any future. If we mean to keep any control over our worlds and our lives, we must be interested in politics. And I know that's kind of rubs people the wrong way, but that's where we are today. As these bills are coming out, being passed left, right, and center, without the acquiescence or without the approval of the public, they're just happening. So thank you for being here and wanting to hear more. So we're here as an extension of a group of residents that felt the need to inform the public of what is going on right in front of us, what our government is doing, shaping, forming, forcing, creating, jeopardizing, inflicting, and I can go on. It's surrounding us in so many ways. We get a bit of angst going on inside of us, that anxiety that you sometimes go, oh shit, where are we? What's going on? Tonight, we're honored to have some exceptional speakers who will speak to us. We will address these points and more. They'll address specific bills like 21, 31, 36. Sorry, wrong game. They're bills that most people haven't even heard of and have no idea what the impact is, but it impacts all of us. You'll hear about that in detail from our guest speakers. I'd like to start tonight with welcoming and introducing our veteran of town hall meetings. I think I've seen him every single one. We're so honored to have Dr. Stephen Malthouse, who is a BC physician. He is also one of the founders of the Canada Health Alliance, and who is a current president of the Canadian Integrative Medical Association. He has practiced medicine over 40 years in rural, urban emergency room, palliative care, and family practice settings, as well as being involved in overseas research into childhood illnesses. Stephen will speak on the Health Professional Occupations Act. You guys got that? The acronym is H.P.O.A, or better known as Bill 36. And also the Emergency Preparedness Act, Bill 31, which I'm sure hardly anybody's even heard about. So please welcome Dr. Stephen Malthouse to the stage.
So there are a lot of bills here, and they all go by numbers. So I don't know if you can keep this straight enough. You almost have to be a mathematician in British Columbia to see and keep track of all these bills as they go past you, because there've been so many that have been passed in the last little while. In November, they passed Bill 31, which I'm going to speak about, which is to do with emergencies. But they also, in that same month, they passed a Bill 44, 46, and 47, which are to do with building high rises next to bus stops and building a sixplex just down the street from you without you having any control of that. In other words, the province taking away a lot of the municipality's ability to control how things are developed in your neighborhood and the infrastructures that are required to go with that. So they're passing these bills like crazy. It's like they're in a race for some reason. And it could be a race to maybe to get out of office. I hope so. But I'm going to take you through a few of these. And this is, so if you have some training in arithmetic and mathematics, you'll be in good shape for tonight. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I think. Hang on. All right. Well, I'm talking about Bill 36, or the Health Professions and Occupations Act, H.P.O.A. Now, what this is about, well, many of you already know that there's more than 1 million people in British Columbia who cannot find themselves a family doctor. And you can see that there's all sorts of things happening here. We've had closures of hospitals and wards have closed. People have had to go down south to get cancer care because we don't have adequate facilities or staffing that's required to man those facilities. And so we're actually in pretty dire straits here. But, you know, our politicians think we're doing just fine. At least the ones that are in office do. But those of us that are in healthcare, we know that this is a disaster, that they are actually, I don't know if we can say they, but the system is being destroyed. And I think our government is definitely contributing to it through bills such as this Bill 36. 60% of British Columbians don't feel that they can find a family doctor when they need one. And the thought is, even this is from the Times columnist down in Victoria, so you can see even in mainstream media, they're recognizing that we have this problem. This is not just alternative media anymore. This is coming out in the everyday press that the general public is reading. So Bill 36, the Health Professions and Occupations Act. Now, this bill was passed in November 2022. All right, so it's been in there for a while. It is an act, so it's not a bill anymore, but it will not be actually brought into I would say enacted until probably June next month, because there are so many sort of undefined clauses in this that they have to fill them in before they can actually enact it. For example, what is misinformation? Nobody seems to know what that is, and certainly the College of Physicians and Surgeons hasn't got an idea. But what they're going to do is they're going to take 15 colleges, 15 self-regulating colleges, and that could be optometrists, dentists, chiropractors, medical doctors, nurses, naturopaths. Those 15 colleges will be amalgamated into 6. And of course, the key words here are modernizing, streamlining, clarifying, that sort of thing. You know, the typical political speak, which is designed to make you say, oh, that makes complete sense to me. Now, the advisory boards, I'll talk a little bit from the doctor's perspective, because we have an advisory board of which 50% are elected by other physicians, you know, depending on their district. So that means at least those 50% of the people on the advisory board for the college, they have some experience about medicine. But what's going to happen with this new bill or act is that 100% of them will be, these advisors will be nominated or put into place by the government. So that means they may not have the experience that we would hope to have for colleges that are supposed to be monitoring their register, doctors, nurses, etc. So all BC practitioners will now have to follow health guidelines presented by the government. In other words, if I want to do something different for you because you're an individual, I won't be able to do that without being fined or potentially imprisoned. And I'll show you that in a minute. But what it means is that there will be no further individualizing of healthcare. It'll be very much restricted. Now, when we say there may not be, it means it's possible we could have things as usual. But this act gives the government powers to change things. And that, I think, is where the danger lies. They have the power to do it, but will they do it? We don't know yet because we haven't got any examples of how they're going to wield this. I mentioned before terms such as false and misleading. We don't know what those mean, but those will be defined later behind closed doors by the government. And you may have heard in the last 4 years, I think I'm one of the guilty ones of presenting misleading information to the public, but now potentially we can be jailed. And this is what the cost would be. If I was an incorporated doctor, and most of the doctors in British Columbia are incorporated, they have companies, corporations, they could be fined up to $500,000 and put into prison for 2 years for presenting misleading information. So that means all you will get will be the guidelines. Whatever the guidelines are for you, for your condition, your diagnosis, that's what will be applied. You won't get anything which will be tailored to the patient sitting in front of the doctor. They can seize your records under this act. And in fact, what they can do is they can come to the doctor's office and put a lock on the door. And they can do that just from having an anonymous complaint. So if I was standing in the hallway and I wasn't wearing a mask, somebody could complain, or the relative of someone could complain. And then they could come and lock the door of my office and stop me from practicing while they're investigating. And I would never know who it was that made the complaint. Of course, the Minister of Health, Adrian Dix, he says this is not true, but then in the same sentence he went on to define who could take your charts, and they could be spread to anybody who the government felt was essential in deciding whether it was necessary or not, and how they were going to punish the person who contravened the law. As I mentioned before, an anonymous complaint will be enough to close a doctor's office. And here's a big one. Anybody that refuses, now I'm just not talking about doctors, I'm talking about all healthcare practitioners, your naturopath, your chiropractor, and all others that are in these 15 colleges. If they actually refuse, they could lose their license. So this would mean that you might have to take a mandated vaccine or other type of therapy or pill or drug if the government thought that that was necessary to keep your patients safe. And we know how that's gone in the last 4 years. Now, this is another one which kind of reaches outside of Canada. And there have been some lawyers who have said that they don't think this act was written in our country, certainly not in our province. That means there's some external influences which are starting to have an agenda which they're reaching into our province to make us follow it. And this is an example of this. The Cabinet and the Minister of Health can adopt as law in BC any regulations, codes, standards, or rules enacted in forest jurisdictions or international bodies. So that means it could be some kind of a rule that's down in the United States or is in Europe and Switzerland, who knows. It could be the WHO. And without any oversight, our government could adopt that and enforce it. There's a good example. And we all know the WHO, the pandemic treaty is coming up soon, and the international health regulations amendments are coming up soon. This is very important as how they're going to try to reach in and control our health care. And we've already seen some evidence of potentially foreign meddling with affairs in our politics. So what does the H.P.O.A really mean? It means the government can now fully control all your healthcare providers, what they can say to you and how they can treat you. It means your private health records can be seized by the government at any time. The government can adopt foreign rules and regulations without oversight. The H.P.O.A, the Health Professions and Occupations Act, will affect your family's access to doctors, nurses, chiropractors, naturopaths, dentists, optometrists, physiotherapists, and many more healthcare practitioners. And hospital departments will continue to close and treatments will be delayed. So this is maybe what you feel like now, that you either you've got a, you feel like screaming, or you've got a terrible migraine just from hearing this, but that's nothing. We've got some more laws that they passed even more recently. That was passed in November 2022. This is the ones that are coming up were passed in 2023. And people didn't even see them as they went past the legislature. They passed new legislation aimed at foreign and mitigating emergencies. Now, does anybody here like roller coasters? No, I don't either. Oh, there's somebody, some brave soul. they're too terrifying. I don't like to go to amusement parks. I think I go on the ones like, well, we went on one with my wife called the parachute. It just goes around. It's very gentle, you know, and we were screaming, get us out of here, get us out of here. It was late at night. They thought, oh, we'll give these guys an extra long ride. You know, we get terrified pretty easily. But this roller coaster, these are the people, they're upside down in this roller coaster. But, you know, roller coasters are a lot like politics these days. So this is kind of what it's like before the last election, right? Really enthusiastic. Look at this, wonderful. And this is what it's like after the last election, kind of where we are now. Although I think maybe we're getting to this point where this is kind of awaiting the next election, where there's a profound sense of illness, nausea, and I don't know if I can bear another one. Whoa, whoa, wow, that went pretty fast. Did you catch that? Well, that's how fast that bill was brought in. But I think if we go back, maybe we can get some help with that. I don't know whether I can do it from here. I can try, perhaps. Let's see. This is kind of, you can see if I was taller, if I was as tall as Frank, I'd be in perfect position to do this, right? Okay, let's just see if we can get down. Whoa, it's going to have to go fast here. So this is like a review for you. We hope we'll stop and we don't get to that one where it zips through everything again. You want me to stop at that one? If you didn't have a migraine before, now you probably got a migraine. I think we're getting close. Bill 31, the Emergency and Disaster Management Act. Now we had an act before to deal with emergencies, but we needed to upgrade it, so to speak. And this one actually went back to about 2015, where there was a meeting in Japan, and they adopted a lot of the things that they thought were worthwhile. So it was back in 2015. Maybe you recognize this phrase, build back better, right? Anyway, this is what they thought they would do, and it was adopted by the Third UN. So this is kind of the roots of this new Disaster Management Act. And the previous one had quite a bit in it, but they wanted to upgrade it. So they added in other causes for disasters or emergencies: transmissible diseases, environmental toxins, security threats, terrorist activities. Those are some of them. Now, where do those come from? I think many of them seem to be manufactured. Certainly transmissible diseases. I don't know if you guys are ready to run from the bird flu yet, but I see that as a means of actually attacking our food supply. But you know, environmental toxins, well, where are those coming from? Anyway, the question is why? Now, I mentioned these words: streamline, modernize, clarify. These are keys that you're being hoodwinked when you start to see those at the beginning of an act. And Bill 31, they also added climate change. And now that's really significant. The other thing they added was the fact that there were penalties for non-compliance. So if you interfere with the rollout of this act, if there was a so-called emergency, then you actually could be punished. Now, it doesn't take much for them to declare an emergency. Even your local authority can do that. So someone in Nanaimo could declare an emergency as long as they thought that they were satisfied that an emergency was present. If they had made reasonable efforts to get people's opinion, the word here is reasonable. All right, so you can see the language here allows a lot of leeway for interpretation. Now, from the provincial perspective, is the minister is satisfied. Now, that's a good question. What does it take to satisfy a minister? And I'm not allowed to go there. My wife told me I wasn't supposed to say any jokes that were really off color, particularly since I don't know the minister personally. But the other one, if there was an initiative, or if there's even the thought that there may be a significant risk maybe there that could give rise. So again, this is a lot is available for interpretation to the minister before they can declare an emergency. Essentially, the minister has to be satisfied, and then they can do whatever they like. General power to do all things necessary. Some of the restrictions you will see would be restrictions on travel to and from an area, restrictions on a business, if you had a business in the area, or if you were going to have an event. An event like this, you wouldn't be able to take place if we were being threatened by, you know, a tsunami on the other side of the island, perhaps. Land and property can be altered and destroyed. Now, this is really important. This is where they can come and take your crop, your trees, your house. They can take just about everything. I don't think they can quite take your children, but nevertheless. So what we have here is they can appropriate, use, and control any of your personal property. They can use and control the use of any land, authorize entry into your property without warrant, any structure on your land. They can prohibit the entry into any structure onto any land by any person. So that would mean if you tried to get back to your house, they could stop you from going there or to your business. And they can authorize or require the alteration, removal, or demolition of trees, crops, structures, or landscapes. Now, this is very important for farmers too, right? Because farmers, they come in and take all their crop, right? They could take all their grain, they could do whatever they want. So again, there's so many mays in this. There's more than 200 mays, M-A-Y, as in might, in this act, which leaves so much room for interpretation. Now, what happens if you don't obey? If you don't obey, then this is something new. Then there can be huge penalties. If you're an individual who commits an offense, then you can be imprisoned up to 1 year, which would mean you interfere with the carrying out of this act. So if they send someone to your property and you interfere with them in some way, you don't let them on, whatever, you can actually be fined up to $100,000 and spend 1 year in prison. Now, if you're a corporation, a company, you could be liable for a fine of up to $1 million. And if you were an officer, director, employee, or agent of the corporation who directed, authorized, permitted, participated in, or even acquiesced in an offense, you could actually be put in prison for 1 year and fined up to $300,000. These are very heavy fines, right? And you may know in the case of what's happened with forest fires in the last year, some people actually saved their property. They were told not to go in there, and the fire department was not going to do anything. They were just standing back, firefighters, and the people went in and actually saved their land and property. Okay, thank you. But what Bill 31 could really mean? An arbitrary decision by a politician in the form of declaring an emergency will allow the government to take what it wants from you and your family. And if you resist in any way, you will be punished. Essentially, that's it. So it could mean something like this, that you don't have a home and you are alone. But this is what's going to save us. Act. Action changes things. And that's why we're here today, I think, is to learn how we've got to learn the problems first, and then we have to have some solutions. So we're going to hopefully talk about different things we can do to get rid of these. I think one of the most important things is you're going to have to look among your candidates in your riding and choose the best one and vote for that person and get people to get out and vote. And you're going to have to put the feet of the candidate to the fire, right? And ask them, where do they stand on these different issues that are so important to your community? And that's what we have to do. So I think what we heard earlier about a quote that, you cannot ignore politics. Not anymore. Not anymore. I don't think our province would survive another 4 years with the current government. We need to change it. And we need to get real champions in there. And we need to keep this in mind too, which is, again, the reason we come together, is the people don't know their true power. That's us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malthouse. Wasn't that incredible? All the stuff we don't know. And my God, look at those penalties. That's against you and I and all of us here. We're all exposed to that possible persecution by our government. What's happening here? You've got to ask that question. Well, when talked about action, Dr. Malthouse took it upon himself to design and put together these wonderful cards to start fighting back. They're simple cards, which are basically saying, we don't agree with what's going on with the health system. We need change happening. They'll be passed around to you over the next minute or so. If you can fill these out, takes very little. This is how many we have right now to turn in. That's just from a couple of doctor offices. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Let's do better. Let's fill these in today. We can't afford any longer. We have to have them back tonight. So don't take them home. Fill them out tonight. Turn them back in. I'm sorry? Oh, that's awesome. So raise your hand if you like one of these cards, if you don't have one already. Yep. Okay. The next thing is we're going to pass around some 3x5 cards. Raise your hands to put questions on there that you want to have for our speakers. And we'll be collecting those in just another minute or two as well. This way we'll have the questions on cards. It's nice and clear, and we will utilize those when we're done with all the presenters tonight. So there's a whole backstory on these postcards. Sheila Malcolmson, our local MLA. The short story is our advocates went to her office repeatedly to deliver the postcards and to request a sit-down meeting with her. After many attempts, failed responses, false promises, finally she replied, "Please write down your questions and I will forward them to the health minister." Does that sound bureaucratic or what? Very lame response, which demonstrated how unavailable she is and how bureaucracy plays that game. It would be important for the audience to know that the postcards are going to her and know that she also voted for Bill 36. I also want everyone to know that our group leader from our small group that organized this town hall meeting, Shirley, spent a lot of time crafting out invites to all our local MLAs, local municipal officials, and key provincial ministers. While we had a few regrets, we have had very few join us tonight. So those who have shown up tonight, thank you so much. We respect you, we respect your openness to hearing what the public wants to hear. So, are you folks ready for more? A couple of you, maybe a few more? All right, well, hold on to your hats. We're ready for quite a presenter now. Our second speaker is Lana H.P.O.A. Lana is a registered nurse who went into nursing in 1985. So she's well qualified to speak from her position. She specialized in labor and delivery, and on the side worked 17 reserves in Northern Canada. Do you think that takes guts? She also has lived and worked in Florida, Hawaii, and Texas. I think she was chasing sunshine before returning to Canada 8 days prior to COVID. She is a certified nurse paralegal, legal nurse consultant. Now, if you can see that real quick, she is the only one in Canada with that title and has a specialty of standards of care and policies and protocols. Her last job was in an open heart operating room where she also did heart transplants. However, it is here on Vancouver Island that she says she has never witnessed such substandard care in her nearly 40 years. And some of you may already know that. She is presently on leave from work due to an assault, which is a daily occurrence for nurses at her workplace. Tonight, Lana will be sharing her experience with the situations going on in the hospital and facilities where she works, and the effect of Bill 36 on healthcare. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Lana to the stage.
Okay, first of all, I didn't do the transplants. I was the circulator. All right, I've got a lot to say, and I've spent a lot of time, trying to get a flow going. First of all, I do want to say thank you though for the invitation. I really do mean that. I want to comment on my bio. It could have been a lot longer. And what I want to add to that is that I grew up in northern Manitoba. No running water, no fridge, no stove. So I'm no pampered princess. I grew up very, very rough. Not in my home. I had great parents, but the community, like shooting, stabbings, stuff. I want to recognize we are in a church. And so there's a lot of content here that I'm going to be very, very cautious of that I just can't say tonight. I'm asking you to read between the lines a little bit. Certainly the language, I'm not going to entertain that. But here we go. And pardon me, but I do have notes. I think everything I have down here needs to be heard. Typically, when I do a presentation, it's like this, and I have bullet points, and I can just do it. But I don't want to forget anything. So if my head is down, pardon me. So history, a little bit history of my work experience, and there's a reason you're going to know in a few minutes why I told you about how I grew up. The most important part of my bio is that I worked those reserves. And so anyway, my experience really extensive. And I did come, as I said, 8 days pre-COVID, wasn't planning on moving here. I hesitate to use the word stuck. I always say stuck, but I came for a vacation. And I came from San Antonio and I haven't been back. So I bought a home here. This is life. I ended up getting a job. And as my bio did say, that is where I was introduced to the absolute most substandard care I've ever seen in my entire near 40 years. And I've worked hardcore. And I don't think Vancouver Islanders, is that what you call yourself here? I don't know. You have no clue how good it can be elsewhere. And I think you're all, when I say you all, I don't mean pardon me, you know what I'm saying. I think people here are just unaware and they become desensitized. So I have pretty much made it a mission to try to do what I can. I still have tons of energy, even after all these years, to bring up the standard of care or just to do what I can. I've had a few jobs, including working for VIU. So then you go place to place to place to place. So I've seen a lot of places on this island and it's not good. So now I know the laws have changed, but in terms of the standards, I really, really have a passion to bring the standards up, but that's another story. So now here I am, I'm on, I've kind of getting settled on the island, bought a home, just a couple, a little bit down. So now I'm at Dufferin Place. So I'm gonna speak quickly because I've got a few pages and the meat and potatoes are yet to come. So I'm at Dufferin Place. So I'm sure you all know there's the hospital, the parking lot, and Dufferin Place. Okay? They're like sisters. I'm privy, so I'm an RN, and so when I go in, I'm like supervisor in charge. So we are privy to what goes on there. And you become friends, right? You just have friends. And so we function back and forth together. So at Dufferin, this is big. So Dufferin, you people all knew about it before I did. So picture this, 3 units, 1, 2, 3, like spokes of a bike. Within each unit, there's 2 wings, 2 wings, 2 wings, 2 wings. The wing facing the hospital, the parking lot, last year in August, they, pardon me, but people die or, they transferred out. They emptied out that wing, which should be housing, I can never remember, 24 or 25 people that should be in there. And they strategically made it, they brought in addicts and you had to be mental health and or have addictions. Basically, they were the worst of the worst population, that nobody could handle them. And they didn't know what to do with them. They couldn't handle them. 3 of them were in Dufferin already. And we'll talk about that later because I will talk about some of them. But, they emptied a unit. And so now there are 7 people and they have they're all private rooms now. So a quad room that should have 4 people now is 1 person. So this is going to be important when you hear me speak. So we have what are, as they say, the worst of the worst. I will get into this, why I am scared to go to work. I've never in my life been scared to work. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. What I want you all to do as I get into all of my topics, and I'm going to start rolling quickly, but I want you to picture you, your mom, your dad, your daughter having a baby, your husband is sick, all of it. Your 14-year-old needs an appendectomy. You picture anybody. You picture your life, and you picture you're going to, what I would really like you to do, if you can, is picture, I'm not, it's not just me. I represent everyone that walks into the building. This is, and I don't want to cry, but I know I will. This is what we do every day. I'm sorry, because I'll probably cry again. Anyway, the topics I'm going to cover are drugs, violence, sexual and physical assault, drinking in their rooms. Isn't that cool? The empty beds, you're going to be beyond, this is probably going to upset you more than anything. The government checks that they all get, and the weapons. I think the weapons are going to come before the government checks. I think that shouldn't have been in that order. In any event, here we go. The drugs, the drugs, the drugs. Every day, we are exposed to them smoking. Um, uh, so I've learned a lot about drugs. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, but boy, do I know things now. And so when it's not lit, you don't smell it. And they kept those drugs in our office when I started there, and we eat on the fly, you know? And so there are two of us working, sometimes just one of us. And their drugs, their butane, their lighters, you know, all their stuff, whatever that is, was kept in that office. And I had a coronary and got that stopped. So that's good. So now it's kept in their rooms. Doesn't mean we don't have problems. And pardon me, I do have to reference my notes here a little bit here. So keep in mind it's odorless when it's not lit, but it's been in our office. We've had baggies full of meth and pot. They have crack. Now I know what all that looks like. We are told, we are instructed to give them anything they want, because they come to the office and demand, well, the nurses, I won't do it, but the nurses prep their pipes. So as I'm sitting there, we have the shells and it's all marked, and now I know how they snort cocaine and how they smoke crack, and they have bubble pipes for meth, and they have all their, they make nice little packages for their needles. They get their tourniquets. I mean, it's ridiculous. The drugs aren't in them, but the nurses prep the pipes. So the nurses, their supplies are all there, and then the nurses, I say, I don't do it, I refuse to do it, but they put it together and they put an extension tubing on, because we wouldn't want them to burn their lips, right? And so they come and we, pardon? Yeah. Well, okay, so they have put it under that category, but we have no control over their drugs, even though they're hiding behind that. That's my opinion. And I don't have time to speak maybe after. So, but as I said, we are told to give them anything they want. So they come and they will collect 20, 25 pipes. They go to the street and sell it for more drugs. I'm going to say this now because I see it in my notes. We're also told not to touch their drugs or their weapons. And we have this in email, we have it in writing, that if we touch their drugs in their room or their weapons, that we can be charged with theft. So when we're scared and we're to look after them, and we see some big old knife in the corner, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Or we know that, holy smokes, like I don't even do drugs. That seems like a lot. Aren't there laws? I thought it was supposed to be a little bit they could have in their pocket. And you see a baggie stuffed with rocks, with meth rocks. Nope, it's just shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. They do smoke in their rooms. And a doctor told me often, I'm buddies with him, who works in both places. He often, this is a true story. This is a true story. And this is what I really want people to know too, is that, for example, think of your parent or yourself, any of us. We go in for surgery. And right now, I'm privy to this, that about 90% of the people in regional are, I'm going to call them homies. Now, what is a homie to me? A homie is somebody who does drugs on the street and just behaves, has no responsibilities. I'm not going to get into it, but I call them homies. And I think you can kind of read between the lines. So this happens often, that there are 3 people smoking meth as I'm trying to recover from a hysterectomy. And I'll tell you, actually, this is not in my notes, but that doctor, they're all on O2, oxygen, because their SATs, or their saturation is down, because they're smoking meth every day. And so he got mad, and he said, like, furthermore, as a nurse, you're trained, you don't even put Vaseline on the lips at the risk of them, causing a spontaneous combustion. So he discontinued all their O2. Do you know he got reported to the board for that? He got reported to the board. So anyway, oh boy, they sell it right in the hallways. There are 3 drug dealers in the general right now. People come off, the homies come off the street, to the hospital, to buy drugs, even in front of the nursing station. And there's nothing that PSO, the nurses, it's just so exhausting. You can't keep up with it. They are so brazen. They come to Dufferin, they're at the window. They come and buzz at the door, they're selling it down there. And we are told, actually, we'll get into this with the weapons, but it's a 24/7. Like, they can come anytime they want. Okay, so this is bad. So we had a meeting, us RNs, at Dufferin there, and I'm freaking out because, there's these bags of drugs, and how sweet for them. They have a little, like a shoe shelf, and they each have all their little slots, like little kindergarten kids. And I'm saying, like, what about these pregnant girls that work here? What about these women, these young girls, say the 20 to 35 group? What about when they're smoking meth? And so I won't get too much into detail because, like I say, I still got lots. So they're smoking meth at the entrance of the labor floor. So I go to security freaking out, and I'll get back to my story, but I go to security freaking out and saying, and they said, Lana, there's nothing we can do about it. I said, so Pappy pulls up, Mummy's in labor, and she has to walk over them or like go through their plume of smoke? Yes, she does. Yes, she does. So when a father brings little children, and I've seen this, coming to see, and I'm going to make this up, maybe you're coming to see their mom or their grandparent, and somebody's like shooting up. There's 3 people laying on the ground outside the general. They're smoking away. And I'm so upset about this, and I'm going to get back to my story. But this is what I was told. We were told. And I said, what about these pregnant girls? I go home and I live alone. So the first thing I do is I walk in, my laundry's on my main floor, and I take my clothes off and I go straight up, and I use one bathroom only after work because I can smell it on my hair. I can smell their drugs in my hair. So this upsets me so badly. So these young moms, they go home and, okay, I can't, 2? Okay. And they're exposing their children. So I'm going to talk quickly. So what are we doing? Are we raising a new generation of drug addicts in utero? Babies? They're a baby coded in ER. Now I'm just going to give you facts. They use it in all the bathrooms. Their laundry is done with the general population. Their used pipes are done with the whole population. Their laundry. That's criminal to me. Violence. When that unit opened, there was a girl that beat the dickens out of geriatrics. And all I'm going to say is one of them died 1 week later. She went unconscious. Nothing happened. So she's ours. She beats the heck out of her room. We are so scared of her. And this is why I say about my bio, why is it that I could work in a reserve and do what I did? And I might go over, but I will make it quick. And do what I did, and I was never scared. I would have guys that would rape or beat their wives come in. And sometimes, you know, because it's the weather, you have to wait for the RCMP to come in. They can't land. Do you know I was never scared? I was never scared, not once. And I couldn't go back to my suite because I had him. And you know, he would sit in that chair and call me nurse. I would go, you know, doze off as well. I was never scared. So how is it that I am scared to go to work now? That's why I brought my history into this. Something's wrong. And I'm gonna tell you about the weapons. One shift, I was threatened for 5 hours off and on that one of them was gonna kill me. Now the sexual and physical assaults were called filthy names. I can't even use like the first initial. Filthy names all the time. Our breasts between our legs were touched, were grabbed. They're drinking in their rooms now. The carriers are pouring them gin, if you can imagine. They're drunk and stoned. I got kicked in the head. That's when I went home and had an absolute mental breakdown. As a nurse, you're called to assess them because they've had a fall. Dude has had 5 falls. He's all over the map. So I have to go and, you know, do my nurse thing with him. And, you know, that's when he just like kicked me in the face. The following shift, 3 of my colleagues were assaulted. One has a dislocated shoulder and her bicep is ripped. The other was sexually assaulted in a way that I can't even say because we're in a church and I don't know any of you well enough to tell you. The third I can't remember. And drinking, actually, you may not know this, but drinking can be in their MAR, which is their medical administration record. So same stuff. That it be, so they're getting, you know, ampicillin, they're getting, you know, some Dilaudid and a 50 ml of vodka. And we nurses are handing them vodka to take their pills with. And that's cool. Weapons. One morning, 7:15, I'm just getting settled. Some dude comes and he was visiting one of our twice a day meth guys. And he's got a hunting knife. Now, I know a lot about hunting, and that was one that you would skin a moose with, or an elk or a deer. Like it had, you know, those are sharp with that little bit of a tip. And of course, I'm scared. And I called administration, and they said, Lan, as long as he's polite and he's not smoking, he's not lighting up, he's got every right to be there. Another time, Mother's Day last year, some guy had an axe in the parking lot, like a 2-foot axe, and he's swinging it. And security was so busy, they couldn't come. I called the RCMP. By the time they, you know, got there, he was gone. But he checked his axe in, and that was his right. Security I love them. I have so much respect for them. And they said like at that time, that was his right to walk into the hospital and check his axe. Empty beds. This is what I want all of you to know is that, so all these people have a bed and they leave for 1, 3, 5, 8 days. Often they go to see their girlfriend, they go just get, you know, crap-faced in Bowen Park, go see their boyfriend. That bed is theirs. And do you know, one day a doctor told me there were 78 people waiting for a bed. Meanwhile, there's all these empty beds. Where I work, they're empty beds. So think about it. It's a unit that should have 24 or 25 people, and we usually have 4. But yet, I mean, everybody else is on stretcher bay. What a game. What a game. Are you okay? I'm going to try. Honestly, I really would like to finish. I'm almost done. The standard of care. So now they've turned the chapel into like a waiting area. The standard of care is that there needs to be an O2 oxygen and a suction per patient. I know that for a fact. And I highly doubt the chapel has suction and O2 for everybody. I've had patients transferred to me to the care home coming from the chapel. But yet there's all these empty beds for dudes and girls to just, it's theirs. It's assigned to them. And one day I was so mad and I called again, I called admin and I said, like, come on, this is unethical. Like, how can we do this in good conscience? Enough's enough. It isn't once or twice. It's all like since I've been here, you know, and I gave some numbers and she said, Lana, just let it go. Just keep your mouth shut. It's easier than what they have waiting for us to send over. It's just easier. I can't, like, I get that, but it's wrong. It's wrong. It's just wrong. They all get government checks because I see them. And it's so bad that they can even get that government check cashed at the hospital or the care home, and they get handed their cash. And they stiff us. They stiff, when I say us, they stiff, you know, the citizens for rent. They are in the $40,000 and $50,000 behind in rent. I know that for a fact. And yet they all get checks. And I don't get that. GST checks even. Like, how do you get it? I don't know anything about that. But they still get checks. The shacks. Adrian Dix is a liar. I don't like that word. That's not something I use in my vocabulary typically. But the shack thing going up, one is going up right now. They're cutting down the beautiful landscaping at Dufferin to put up a shack. So 1 month ago, he was on television preaching that they're not smoking in public places. They're not doing it in hospitals, not in playgrounds, not around children. That's not true. So it's a contradiction. So either he was lying then or he's lying now. So what's going to happen now is they're building allegedly, I've actually got the plans in my email. I wanted to bring them tonight, but I have so many emails behind, I just couldn't find it. But $1 million, and I believe that. Like a nice, sweet little heated shack. So they have sex on the street. We see them. They have sex on the street. They're doing their thing. What do we think is going to happen with this shack? Like, so he's making it easy for them. So the whole thing is insanity. Anyway, the shacks. I'm almost done, folks. I just want you to know, I'm probably 1 minute into it here. I did do an interview with the National Post. If you're interested, I believe his first name's Adam Vivo. Yeah, so, and it was about nurses, healthcare losing control. I am Lily in there. I just gave myself away. I don't care. So I'm Lily. So to reiterate, we're scared to death to go to work. And we've honestly gone mental. I'm not joking. There's so many of us off. I'm the strongest person I know. And, oh, you're sweet, thank you. Oh, that's to my friend Tamara. And we have no support. There are no policies in place. There's no policies for anything. It feels lawless. Yes, ma'am. You know what? Someone just asked me that, honestly. I hesitate to criticize, but it's just always all talk. You know, nothing, it just everything goes in circles. Everything. And I'm going to end this with the lawlessness. The patients are now conditioning us. We are so afraid. I'm so afraid. I've opened that office door and I've had this coming at me. And like, I don't want a broken, fractured cheek. I don't want to be hit. I'm sorry for crying. So we succumb to their demands and we get no support, and it's due to fear and no support. So anyway, thank you. And I'm sorry I went over, but I really thought it was important that you all could hear some of this.
It's important. Look. no, I get it. Okay, I told you this was going to be heavy. I know it's turned a lot of heads, a lot of hearts, a lot of emotions. I initially talked to Lana about a week ago, and she said, "Do you have 5 minutes? I can tell you my story." Well, it was over an hour and a half later. There's so much and so much depth to this story. You've only heard the top of it, but you've heard some of the horrible side of it. Now I ask, has anybody heard that same story out here? We've got a few hands out there. Are you glad that you know now what's going on? Thank you to the gentleman who said, let her talk. Because I think that was so important not to rush her. My God, you've got such a big heart, such a strong soul to deal with all this, and then to step up and face this. You have no idea what you may be facing in the long run. I know that. But I think you've got a lot more people on your side now. What do you think? So I'm now going to bring up Pastor Robert, who's going to introduce the next three speakers. I thank you very much, and I'll be back in a little while.
Our third speaker this evening is Michelle Smith. And Michelle, we want to thank you for making the trip up today from Victoria. A bit of Michelle's bio. Michelle is an advanced certified trauma and resilience practitioner. She has her master's in the field of complex trauma and 24 years experience with survivors of the traumatic death of a loved one. Tell me you haven't had your hands full in the last year or two. Yeah, I bet. She is in private practice and the founder and president of Aaron's Society, focusing on trauma. Michelle also informs schools, works with groups and children, and provides training for professionals. Tonight, Michelle will be sharing about the current mental health practices, parental alienation caused by government, safe supply drugs for minors, transgender ideology in schools, and the current prescribing of mental health drugs. Can we put our hands together and welcome Michelle to the platform?
Actually, can I put this?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, thank you also very much for asking me. Is this, okay, okay. I'm short. Is this any better? Is it good? Good. Okay, everybody here? Awesome, awesome, good, thanks. Trauma, what an extensive subject. It is actually, it's very extensive and there isn't time tonight to be able to condense everything into 15 minutes, especially when it comes to symptomology, treatment of it, and so on. I can tell you in our culture, it's an incredibly overused word, and for most people. And so what people, because of that, what people generally think it is, it probably isn't. And, but it does have devastating and is having devastating effects on our society, our culture, and current bills, legislation, and ideologies are in direct conflict to healing our communities. This is a problem, a big problem. So it is necessary for a real quick breakdown or definition of trauma experience in order to set a basis for what I'll be speaking about. Trauma is an experience or life event that is a threat to one's own safety or the safety of a loved one. It can be a perceived threat. But it's one in which the victim can't run, they can't fight, and so it leaves the victim feeling helpless. When the event occurs, the cognitive thinking part of the brain goes offline and can't be accessed. So this isn't going through the thinking part of the brain, the rational part of the brain. It's stopping at the fear center, the midbrain. And it's igniting the nervous system in a fight or flight response. And if it can't go full cycle, that response is stuck there. And it doesn't go away just because the threat does. It's stuck. So it starts to manipulate the victim's life. It leaves the victim with a real shattered sense of safety, feelings of helplessness, and a system that's what we call switched on and constantly scanning for danger, is constantly hypervigilant, trying to ward off whatever is coming at them next. These responses are not voluntary. They go underneath the cognitive awareness, usually for the victim. So you've probably heard of things like a fight response, flight response, those types of things. That isn't just somebody getting mad. A fight response, for example, that can be extremely violent. And even if it is non-violent, it's going to be assaultive because that person is going to lose their cognitive ability to think. You are going to get a very nasty response if you trigger a fight response. So these responses are not usually thought out or cognitive. Symptoms. There's such a wide range of symptoms: depression, emotional dysregulation, extreme physical pain, often diagnosed as fibromyalgia, self-harm behaviors, inability to move forward, drug addiction. I'm going to repeat that. Drug addiction is a trauma symptom. Suicidal ideation, reenactment, dissociation, isolation, and a whole lot more. So one doesn't need to have all the symptoms to be suffering from trauma. They only need to have some. Everybody's different. Some people are very high functioning, but find themselves constantly appeasing others, particularly authority figures, or sidestepping or avoiding anything that may remind them of the trauma, so it can manipulate even those that are high functioning. In children, it is the most missed and misdiagnosed issue there is. The symptoms are endless. It can cause what we call learning disability, sleeplessness, hypervigilance, acting out, ADHD symptoms, attachment problems, gender dysphoria. In my textbooks, gender dysphoria is a trauma symptom. Just so you all know. Kids tend to grow out of that. And so much more. Now, during COVID, I saw kids bedwetting, reduced to baby talk, parents waking up and finding their 7 or 8-year-old sleeping at the base of their bed. I had a 17-year-old sitting across from me, so frozen solid with fear, he couldn't move anything except his thumbs. Parents didn't know what was wrong. They tried everything from discipline to everything else. And they said, he's frozen with fear. And so I had to attempt to get this 17-year-old out of a frozen state. But that frozen state will actually keep the victim from moving forward in any way. I can't get my schoolwork done. I can't have a shower. I can't move forward. My goals are destroyed, and on we go. So it's not just the physical so I saw a lot and it didn't stop. We're still seeing it because the trauma didn't stop there. So these are still things that we're dealing with with kids, and in particular hypervigilance. Now, trauma's only been in the foreground of study for roughly about 20 years. So you're not seeing a lot of people who specialize in it. And you can't just take a course in it, and believe you're good to go. I mean, trauma, I think the only full degree course is about 4 years long, and it's on campus. That's how extensive it is. So you're not, it's a very extensive subject matter. The problem with trauma is that once that reflex is stuck in the nervous system, it doesn't go away because the threat does. It stays stuck. It manipulates the victim's life. You are seeing it all around you, and you just probably haven't identified it for what it is. We've seen people at rallies literally screaming in each other's faces. I mean, I saw a gentleman jump over the dividers and punch a cop in the side of the head. We're talking major fight responses when you trigger people. COVID was a threat to safety. I can't run, I can't fight, I'm helpless, fear, stuck in the nervous system. We had an explosion of what was termed mental health issues. if a person has been previously traumatized, even as far back as childhood, which most people have had some sort of experience with trauma. If a person has been previously traumatized, another trauma comes along, it doesn't have to be the same trauma. It only has to make you feel the same. I can't run, I can't fight, I'm helpless, bang, off goes that response. It triggers a trauma response immediately. So again, it doesn't have to be the same trauma. So a lot of what we're seeing and have been seeing is actually old trauma. It's not even new. I mean, some of it's new, but a lot of it is actually old. Anybody who knew anything about trauma actually are calling it a trauma tsunami. So even police officers I talked to were calling it that. They've had enough PTSD courses to know what it was. But many are also saying that our current approaches to mental health have been and are a colossal failure. They need to be revamped. It's horrible. You cannot chemicalize or medicate a trauma response that's stuck in the nervous system. You can't. You may be able to treat some of the symptoms, maybe, but that trauma is still there. You're not going to take it away with a pill. So we are not hitting any part of this with a chemical approach to treating trauma. Now, that doesn't mean if anybody's on meds, you should come off it. That's dangerous. Don't do that. And not unless you're under a doctor's care. But I'm telling you, if it's trauma, which it's a lot of the basis of what we're seeing, it's not going to be medicalized away in that way. Now, educators had regularly told me that before COVID, they maybe saw one transgender, if any, in a whole school. After COVID, at least one per classroom. Yeah, what does that tell you? Now, I had phoned a school counselor to give the results of some screening I'd done on a 12-year-old, and I mentioned her by name, and I was told she doesn't call herself that anymore. The counselor told me she doesn't have any choice but to call her what this girl wants. I said, well, I won't be calling her that. I liked that kid. I'm going to be calling her what I know her as. So I asked the counselor if she was aware that we have a name for that kind of behavior. It's usually referred to as dissociative identity disorder. It's a trauma symptom, and that she was reinforcing it. You're reinforcing trauma stuff. She said, I was singing to the choir. She didn't have any choice. Right now, I'm looking at a lot of teachers suffering from trauma and jumping ship, and there isn't, and nurses as well. And there isn't a lineup waiting for the positions to be filled. One counselor told me the other day, I am sick to death of pulling our middle school kids off the floor from their drug use, off the hallway floors. When sex education was introduced to school, they said parents aren't doing their jobs. We always get handed these great one-liners, like parents aren't doing their jobs. Or how about we need to keep people safe from counselors. That's another really good one that's coming up. But this one, parents aren't doing their job. So we need to help the problem with a teenage pregnancy. Well, that soon escalated to condoms in the washroom, and you can visit the nurse or the pill, and you have to tell your parents. There it started. We know where it's evolved from there. So getting in between parents and children is parental alienation, something that is incredibly frowned down upon if it was a custody battle or divorce battles, even to the point that it could cost someone their children. It causes trauma in families, in children, as parents feel the control of their children being torn from them, and the child can grow up with any of the trauma symptoms, including drug addiction, and may even alienate from their own children later in life. Are educators psychologists? Are they experts in child sexuality? And if you knew where this type of curriculum actually originated from, you'd be shocked. When raw sexual material is given to children without moral context, it often just becomes a how-to manual. So suddenly we had this explosion in STDs in children between 10 and 14 years of age, which is an indicator of promiscuity in kids as young as 9. The second we brought this kind of sex education into schools, because there was it was out of context completely. This is off topic, but just so you know, if you want to look it up, our IQs in developed countries has been substantially dropping. Some say since the 1970s, some say since the Cold War. I think it's since the Cold War. If you look it up, you'll find everybody has a different reason why our IQs are dropping. I have my own theory on it, but our IQs are dropping. Although maids for mature minors has been taken off the table, it wasn't taken off because of public outcry. It was taken off because they couldn't get enough doctors on board. So it's important to note that the cognitive part of the brain, the frontal lobe, this is really important, folks, really important. The cognitive part of the brain, the frontal lobe, the part that reasons, problem solves, looks at long-term consequences, it's where our empathy lies, philosophize, where we come to conclusions. It does not fully develop until someone is 25 years old. Yeah, look it up. That's the average, 23 for girls, about 26 for boys, yeah. So average of 25. So the term mature minor is a deception. I don't care how mature that kid is, you cannot draw on a resource you don't have. And that brain is not developed. That part of the brain is not developed until they're 25. So the idea that that this was even on the table for discussion without parental consent, suicide, whether it's assisted or not, will cause the most extensive trauma you've ever seen, usually affecting somewhere between 7 to 10 people. What do we do then? Euthanize them all under the umbrella of incurable mental illness? Is that what we're planning on doing? Interesting that Canada has the highest rate of organ transplants from maids. Okay. Yeah, highest rate of anywhere, right here in this. And guess what? The BC government has been applauding this. Look, this is not something I think should be celebrated. We ought to be investigating this. You know, it's terrible. Safe supply drugs. Wow, that was genius. Firstly, Purdue Pharma had to admit to being a direct cause of the opioid crisis and was charged with 3 felony charges. How is it possible for our government are now offering this for free to minors? Again, without parental consent, standing between parents and kids again. So it appears the pharmaceutical industry and anyone who benefits financially from them are not going to let a good crisis go to waste, no matter which way we slice it. So we have already noted that self-medicating, drug addiction, alcohol abuse can be a symptom of trauma. So we traumatize an entire population of people, including our young, with COVID and then offer them free drugs. What could possibly go wrong, folks? And we use deceptive terms like safe supply. Wow. So is it a surprise that our overdoses have climbed by over 400% since 2019? Who's coming up with these ideas? It's astounding. I think actually who's ever coming up with these ideas, this is a good indication that our IQs have dropped, folks. So have any of the people mandating this ever talked to an addict? Doubtful. Are they drug and alcohol addiction counselors? No. They were warned beforehand that these drugs would wind up being sold or traded to organized crime for stronger drugs, and they would wind up in the hands of our youth. It appears that no one in this country wants to stay in their own lane of experience. And all are alienating parents from children and causing trauma. The very people who are mandating these dangerous policies are the same people who are preparing under B36 to take control of the counseling industry. Clinical counseling mostly are boots on the ground people, using buzz statements like protecting people from counselors. May God help us all. I guess I haven't quite figured out that it isn't the counselors we need protection from. But if you can see that, these are the kinds of things that they're mandating, you can get a picture of why it is so deeply disturbing that these are the same people that are going to be controlling the counseling industry. Like it's horrifying for me. A look at history, you'll find that we have been systemically traumatized since the Cold War. There's been Y2K, acid rain, threats of war, terrorism, H1N1, 9/11, climate change, HIV, COVID, and a whole lot more. But with COVID, they eliminated everything that could be healing: access to doctors, support systems, family, and most of all, they shredded communities. Can you imagine that a population of people who are driven by fear, constantly scanning for danger, and cannot detect safety, the kind of power someone will have if they wave a carrot of safety and said, this will keep you safe? They will, they're going to head for that, even if that carrot's hanging over a cliff. Anyone who gets in the way of a traumatized person and their perceived safety is likely to get a real ugly response. Someone knows everything there is to know about behavioral control through trauma, or they don't know a darn thing at all. I'm going to let you come to your own conclusions because this is a blueprint for it, folks. Trauma does not go through the cognitive part of the brain. So talk counseling hasn't proven very effective. Psychotropic drugging does not kill trauma reflex in the nervous system. Don't come off drugs if you're on them, please. There are many approaches a trauma practitioner will use to help bring trauma full cycle. Solid community is one of them, actually. It can be a safe place for those suffering from trauma, emotionally regulating and grounding, and it can provide a sense of belonging, meaning, and purpose. It gets almost impossible to heal from individual trauma when communities are in shreds. I wonder if somebody knew that when they shredded our communities. So with some final thoughts, make your community strong, stand together with a common vision. I had a beautiful young Black lady tell me one time that it isn't the racist remarks that come her way in public. Beautiful girl. She said, it's all the people that are sitting around that heard it and did nothing to help. Don't leave Dr. Malthouse or Adam or anybody else standing out there alone and not finding you behind them. One person can't do this. These are community efforts. You have a great deal of power to change. You just, and what you will or you will not accept in your communities, even you have to pressure for bylaws and you have to be a bit uncomfortable for a while. You're going to have to decide if there's anything worth saving in our systems right now, or whether you need to create your own. That's up to you. But I will tell you, you threw me off with this. Okay. But I will tell you this. We were raised up as Canadians in Arctic trapping, log rolling, and barroom brawls. Don't forget who you are and don't lose your backbone now. You're Canadian. Let's go.
Thank you, Michelle. Cuts close to the bone. We're going to hand up cards right now for any of those of you who have questions. Does anyone have questions? That means we're going to get a card to you. We would like you to fill that out immediately. And then in a minute or so, we would like to collect those cards back from you so we can assess them and have them ready for the review later. I wanted to ask the question as we're doing this evening. Does this nation deserve what is happening? Well, someone once told me something, you deserve what you tolerate. That's painful to hear. But you know, God's given us all a voice to stand for the right things in life. And to do the right thing often is the most difficult thing. And what you're doing here this evening is not necessarily an easy thing. But we are called to make a stand together and to be a voice of reason that brings life to the Canadian population. And that's what we want, right? Good. How are we going with writing down the questions? Can we get those cards back from you? I'm sure we can. Is Jessica going to get the cards? You want to receive the cards from those who've written them out? When you're ready, just put your hand up and she'll come to you. Right this side, Jessica. Are you doing all right? Good. Wonderful. Our fourth speaker this evening is Michael Mulligan, barrister. And Michael too made the excursion over the Malahat to Little Nanaimo today. We thank you for coming out all the way, Michael. Michael has been practicing criminal law in Victoria for 26 years. And get this, he also does a weekly radio show on CFAX in Victoria called Legally Speaking. He has been involved with issues relating to the Law Society for many years. Tonight, Michael will speak on the effect Bill 21, if passed, would have on legal profession and what this would do to our communities. You realize if the government can do it to healthcare practitioners and lawyers, who will be next? Can we put our hands together to welcome Michael to the platform?
Thank you very much. I must say, when I came here tonight, one of the interesting things being a criminal lawyer who does from time to time spend time in other communities up and down the island, is you wind up with sort of a unique and not always happy impression of communities you're in. Because usually when I'm showing up, it's not about some happy event. It's about some terrible event. And I must say, I was sitting here tonight thinking, well, this is a nice replacement memory for Nanaimo. I'll think about this lovely place, a beautiful evening. But I must say, I'm going to go away from this with some different thoughts than I think I came in with, having heard from Lana about what the state of affairs here is in hospitals and for nurses. And that sure sounds a whole lot more like the sort of issues that I'm dealing with professionally than I thought I would hear about. So thank you so much for telling us about all of that. So I got my work cut out for me here, trying to keep you all engaged about why Bill 21 should matter to you, particularly when I'm competing with a playoff game. So to give some context, I think I need to tell you a little bit about how the legal profession works and what change this bill would have, and then some explanation for why the government might be pursuing it. And so the first thing to know about the legal profession is the legal profession is independent of government. And it's important that it is. It's important that it's independent from government so that if you are accused of doing something wrong, if you're accused of doing something wrong as a doctor, if your house is being searched, if something's being seized, you're charged with an offense, your children are being taken away, whatever it might be, you're able to hire somebody like me who is not beholden to the government. And that is true at the moment. The Law Society is independent of the government. It genuinely is. The benchers, which are like the board of directors for the Law Society, are elected, over the overwhelming number of them are elected by lawyers themselves. And the reason it is set up that way is not to be some benefit for lawyers. It's similar to why we have independence for judges. That is not a benefit for the judge. We don't have judges appointed in a way that they can't be removed if you don't like their decisions to somehow benefit the judge. We do that so that when you wind up in front of a judge and they're making some decision, particularly when the other side of it is the government, which is not at all uncommon, it's every day I'm in court, the other side of it's the government. You want to have an independent judiciary so that the person who's making the decision about your life isn't answering to the other party that's trying to do something to you. That's why we have it. But an independent judiciary isn't a whole lot of good without an independent legal profession, because judges don't roam through town looking for injustices and trying to fix them. And so it is critically important to you, if you want to live in a society which is free and independent, and you want to have some person you can call when there's some apparent injustice being done to you, and it's sort of, I think, perhaps suitable that I'm here at the end of the list of potentially problematic bills speaking about Bill 21, because when some of those things might happen to you, you want to be able to call somebody who's not beholden to or worried about the government looking over their shoulder. That's why it's so important that we have an independent legal profession, and we have that. And so at the moment, if you look at the Legal Profession Act, it's the one that gives sort of the guidelines for how the Law Society operates. Its number one objective is this: to uphold and protect the legal rights and freedoms of all persons. Pretty tough to argue with that, right? This Bill 21, if it passes, it hasn't passed yet, is going to change what the objects would be of the entity that would regulate lawyers, okay? So first of all, the government would have much more control over who's appointed to be on the board to make the rules. That is a concern because that reduces the independence of the legal profession. But it's more than what might theoretically happen as a result of the government having additional control and being able to appoint more people. Right in the legislation, right now, they would remove what I've told you the objective of the Law Society is now: rights and freedoms of all persons in British Columbia. And they have replaced it with a list of things which are largely political priorities of the current government. Now, they include things like, the second thing on the list is that the Law Society would be charged with doing things to implement the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Okay, that's number 2 on the list. Now, some people might think that's a good idea. Some people might think that's a bad idea, right? It's not appropriate, whatever you think of that goal, that the regulator of the legal profession has a political goal as one of its key objectives. That's just not appropriate. And even if you're somebody who thinks, well, that's just a universal great thing, who could be against the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, even if you think that's great, you might not like the political priority of the next government. And the point of the matter is, think about this. Like, we've had a discussion now about, things like the effect of treaties or the effect of legislation. You've heard there's controversy about the agreement in Haida Gwaii, or there was controversy over the proposed Land Act that was backed off on. Now, let's just imagine that you're the person who's taking some issue with whether, for example, your property should be expropriated. You want to hire a lawyer to help you so you can go to court. Do you want a circumstance where the regulator of the person you're hiring has as one of its priorities to implement the piece of legislation that you're taking issue with? Just think about that. It's an outrageous state of affairs. It is very, very important. Now, this is hard to compete with a hockey game, and most people don't think they're going to ever wind up in that position. They just don't, right? Most people never think they're going to call me, right? Most people don't think their office is going to get searched, or most people don't think they're going to get charged with some offense. But let me tell you, it happens. I'm busy, right? And when it happens, you need to know that the person who's helping you is there to help you. And they're not looking over their shoulder at what on earth is going to happen to me if I'm taking issue with this when I've got a bunch of regulators appointed by the government who have as their mandate to achieve various political goals of the government, whatever the government of the day might be. So again, don't look at it from the point of view of, do you like what they've got in the list now? You should ask yourself, should there be a list? That's really what's at stake. And what's going on here? Why are they doing this, right? I think there are 2 reasonable explanations for it. One is a general desire for control or to achieve political objectives that no doubt they genuinely think, well, these are universal. Who could disagree with my list of 5 things? So that's no doubt part of it. But there's other elements to it as well. One is naturally it's uncomfortable to have a group of independent people who might be regularly criticizing you, suing you. No one wants that. And under the model we have now, that happens. It's not just theoretical. And an example of that, and it's one of the other explanations that the government provides for this piece of legislation, Bill 21, is they say, well, this will make legal services cheaper. That's one of their explanations, right? Now, there's some history to that I've had some involvement with. So I'm going to give you the history so you know about it when you're hearing about that kind of justification. Another thing you should know, if you're going to hire a lawyer in British Columbia, unlike any other province in the country, we're the only province where when you hire a lawyer, you pay a special extra tax. It's a provincial sales tax that applies to no other professional service. You do not pay it if you hire an architect, an engineer, you don't hire for paying for a dentist, nothing else, just lawyers. It was introduced in 1992 by the then NDP government. Mosa Hoda introduced the legislation, if you remember him. And when he introduced it, he said, this tax on lawyers' bills, and make no mistake, the lawyer doesn't pay it, the client does, right? This is to fund legal aid in the province for poor people that can't afford a lawyer, okay? What happened after about 5 years is the tax wound up collecting more money than the province would give to the Legal Aid Society, okay? At that time, the then opposition, the Liberal opposition at the time, there's a fellow named Jeff Plant, he was the critic. And he got all over the government. He said, this is wrong, right? You're taking money from the poor. This was supposed to pay for legal aid. This is an outrage. Well, what happened? The government changed. And then 2001, 2001, 2002, they cut legal aid funding roughly in half. They closed all the legal aid offices in the province. They virtually eliminated family legal aid. All poverty legal aid went, and they kept the tax. Okay, of course they kept the tax. Who doesn't want to keep the tax? You got it in place, right? One of the things that I was involved with was organizing a law society resolution to censure the Attorney General. It was a vote of non-confidence in the performance of the Attorney General for failing to meet his core mandate, which would be dealing with ensuring justice is done in the province of British Columbia. It passed overwhelmingly. Now, do you think that would happen under this scheme? Well, whatever you think might happen, one of the other things they've done is, if this bill passes, removed all of the sections that allow members to call meetings like that, to have that kind of pushback and response. That'll be gone. So think about that background when you hear the argument, this is to help with access to justice. What they're really talking about there is, rather than properly funding legal aid, and that tax, by the way, now collects, they skim off more than half of the money that it collects every year. Half, more than half. It goes into general revenue, not provide to legal aid. That's why if you're a person on welfare, you're a single person on welfare, you're too wealthy to get legal aid coverage. Most people don't find that out until they wind up in trouble, okay? So what their plan would be under this thing would be to create a bunch of paralegals who they could have doing legal work for the poor. Rather than putting the money where it's supposed to be, that's what the poor will get in British Columbia. So that's why, despite there being a hockey game on, and a playoff one at that, that's what you should be aware of when you hear about this legislation. It impacts on all of this other stuff, right? If you take issue with these things, you want somebody to contest that when you're the person in trouble, just think about what the implications of this are. It's dreadful. Bill 21, remember the number. Thank you.
That sure got the juices stirring. Absolutely. All right, once again, we want you to put your hands up if you will have any questions, so we can get some question cards to you that you can fill out for us very quickly. All right, we've got some in the front here. Right up front. Yeah. Yeah. We appreciate your patience. I know it's pretty warm in here. One thing I'm assured of, just being able to hear the speakers this evening, is not only I, but you have lots of news to tell our neighbors, to wake up our families and friends, to let them really know what is really going on. Yeah. And we have to lead by example, I suppose, eh? Yeah. I see some cards being handed back already. That's good news. Please don't be shy. If you are thinking you have a question, please write it down. There we go, one more. That's great. Well, our final speaker this evening is Adam Walker, MLA. Yeah, you can give him a hand. Sure, why not? Adam is local from Parksville. He was elected as in the MLA for Parksville Qualicum in 2020. Adam is a small business owner, former town councillor, and farmer. While a town councillor for Qualicum Beach from 2018 to 2000, he prioritized housing, enhancing public places or spaces rather, and community engagement. He has owned and operated a tech business in the region for over 15 years. Adam has lived in Qualicum Beach area all his life and is proud to call the beautiful community home. He and his wife operate a small farm and are raising 2 daughters. Tonight, Adam will be speaking on Bill 44, 46, and 47. You may say, what is that? Well, he's about to tell you. These bills that have been quietly passed without not too many people realizing that. And Adam is here to tell us what these will mean to our communities. Adam, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I know there's a lot of questions that we want to get to, so I'll try to keep this short. I'm assuming that most people in this room know what Bill 44 is, but I'll run through it as quick as I can. The one parallel that I see with Bill 21, Bill 36, and Bill 44 is that we are going to see likely this government do the same thing they did with 36 and they did with 44, which is invoke closure. You know, Bill 44, we were halfway through debating this bill and government said, we've heard enough. We want to make sure that we get on helijet. We don't want to miss the ferry. We're going to cancel debate halfway through the bill. And that was the end of the democratic process that I was sent to do and others were sent to do. So let's take a step back, is that we are in a housing crisis. I think most people recognize that the price of housing is very much out of touch with reality for a lot of people in our community. As an MLA, I have so many seniors coming to my office that have been evicted, that have very little equity, and then find themselves in a situation where they're going to be living in their car. We get pool passes because that is how they're going to have a shower. We give them bus passes because they can't afford gas, like $2 a liter. If you're making $1,100 a year or a month on the government surplus subsidies or GIS and all that, you can't get by on that. And so I think we need to recognize that we have a problem with housing. The province, we've seen hundreds of thousands of people move here in a very short period of time. And the government of British Columbia's solution was, we see a problem. We're going to do this solution. We're not going to listen to local government, but we're going to give them all this problem. So Bill 44 changes the way that zoning works in the province in basically everywhere. If you live in an urban area, you, at the end of June, will have your properties mandatorily rezoned. Councils can't vote against this. Now, there is a member of council here who did vote against some of this, and I won't say Cheryl's name, but there are 2 members of council that decided to speak their mind and say that, we're not going to put up with this. So what's happening is every single family lot in an urban area is now going to allow for 4 homes. And that is in Richmond, probably okay. They actually just went through this process. It took them 2 years to go through the planning process. They brought the community together. They said, we're in a housing crisis. We need to find a solution. And so they rezoned most of Richmond to allow for 6 homes on a single family lot. They did that as a community, but they found areas that it just never will make sense to put that kind of density. Infrastructure. We're not going to tear up perfectly good roads, perfectly good pipes to allow density in an area that just doesn't make economic sense. It's a no-brainer. They also recognize that they're on the hook for a large portion of the public transit costs. Well, why have sprawl with high density units all over the place if you're going to be stuck as a local government paying for the transit? It just didn't make sense for them. So they came up with a plan where they said, we got to come up with this many homes. We're going to, as a community, figure out where they're going to go. And it took them a couple of years and they did that. What the province did was, without talking to local councils, is they have gone through the process where by June 30th, every local government has to pass bylaws that allow for these 4 homes on every single family lot. And as we were going through the debate, I went through some of the notes. Hansard, you can see what everybody said to the bill, and it's worthwhile looking at this up. I wanted to, this is important to me. I was on town council for a couple of years. If whoever's been involved in official community planning processes, thank you if you have been involved in it. It's so important. We come together as a community, we say, this is what we want to look like as a community 5, 10, 20 years from now. And what's now happening is councils are passing laws that basically say this is now going to be allowed everywhere. And there's going to be huge cost to that. And what I fundamentally don't understand is a lot of the impacts of this density. I was talking to Cheryl, the hospital. The Nanaimo hospital was built in 1963, 61. When you go to that hospital, you see the brick building, that's the original hospital. There are days in that hospital where we have 100 patients more than there are beds in that hospital. So you can imagine you have a few patients in the hallway, that's a bad day. 100 patients in hallways and closets, that's a provincial responsibility. So the province is saying, you need to build the housing, but we're not going to come and support you when it comes to healthcare. You need to build the housing, but we're not going to help you when it comes to schools. And the impact on local governments is it's going to raise your taxes. It's going to lead to uncertainty in communities. But the irony of this is it's actually leading to less homes getting built. We have planning departments now that are absolutely scrambling, that are turning down high density projects in our downtowns because they have to go through this planning process. There are some good parts to this. I'm not going to say the whole thing's bad. There's a requirement now that there's a housing needs assessment, that you have to actually, as a community, say, how many homes are you going to need in 20 years from now? And you got to plan for that, because some communities have not done that. There's a requirement now that you got to go through your official community plan every 5 years. That's a useful thing. But if there's one thing I've learned in government, and I've only been at this for, I guess, 5 years now, is you do the work together. You listen to people in your community. I mean, I'm looking out and I see all of you here. You're engaged, you're passionate, you're smart. You want to be a part of a process, and you deserve a government that listens to you, that responds to those urgent needs, whether it's healthcare or housing or dealing with the opiate crisis, but they don't do that work unilaterally. Bill 46 and 47, we've got a transit-oriented, I don't remember the names of the whole thing, but yeah. The idea is if you live near a bus route, like a really high, like a node, there's 3 of them in Nanaimo. Technically there should be 4, but the province hasn't funded the core downtown. It will, instead of 4 units per lot, you're going to see 6 in some areas, and you're going to see a lot more than that. And so these are multi-story buildings, and the impact by not planning with the community is Woodgrove Mall is one of these transit hubs. And so you've got some land in Lanceville, rural land, no services, it doesn't connect to the highway really well, and now you're allowed 4-story buildings there. That is not good urban planning, and that would not happen if this work happened collectively. The other bill that hasn't really been discussed is the new one for amenity cost charges. And when you are a developer and you want to build an apartment building, local government comes up with DCCs. It's supposed to, you can't profit off of those. You're supposed to charge for the basic necessities. You're running pipes to the home, you're running pipes away from the home. That's what a DCC is supposed to charge, or supposed to cover. This new bill will allow for local governments to charge developers for things like childcare, for things like fire hall, for things like community parks. These are all important things. But when your goal as government is to make housing more affordable, and you're taxing the heck out of developers, you know, the idea that a developer is a villain in this whole scheme is completely false. These are the people who are building the homes that we need to live in. And you want to know the honest truth, you add a tax to a developer, they're passing that on 100%, usually 110%, to the person who's buying the home. So I'm really happy that you are all here. This bill passed last fall. It's coming into force, a portion of it at the end of June here. And it feels like nobody knew it was coming. It feels like people still don't know what's coming. In the district of Lanceville, they've basically said, we're not doing it. The town of Qualicum, where I live, they are run off their feet trying to figure out the planning process. And I think still at this point, people don't know what's happening. So it's people like you that are taking the time, missing a hockey game. I know some of you are checking the score. I'm not going to say what it is. But taking the time out of your busy schedules to learn more about this and get engaged. And I got to tell you, when those postcards that you have there, when they come to the MLA's office, I don't know how, I'm not going to say anything bad about Sheila. I don't know how she runs her office. But, but when I get those postcards, I take every single one of them, I put them in a spreadsheet, and I draft a letter, and I send a letter back to everyone who's done that. It is so important. It is so important that people get engaged in the process, and it is so important that your elected officials reciprocate that. It's a relationship. We are here as elected officials to serve our communities. We're not here to serve political parties. We're not here to serve ourselves. We're here to serve every one of you. So when you send a letter or an email, or you stop a politician in the street, it's not that you should have to expect a reply. You deserve a reply. And just remember that when you send those emails in, if you don't get a reply within a couple weeks, send another one. Be polite, but it is your right and you deserve to have a response from your elected official. And I hope that you've all learned through this. So that's all I have. I want to hear the questions. So I'm gonna pass the mic back, and hopefully we've saved a few minutes here so some of these questions can be answered. And I hope I've sort of touched on what Bill 44, 46, and 47 are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, folks. Thank you very much, Michael. Most of us have no clue what that was all about until now, and now realize the importance of standing up and attending council meetings, asking questions, and being part of our local government so that they can call to account the provincial government itself. So we're coming around with the cards for questions. We're going to come up here. Pastor Robert's going to join me, and we're going to have our speakers. Please come up and grab a chair up here. We're going to throw the questions out at you and see how we do with that so that we can get the public input on this side. So hasn't this been great so far? Anybody learned something? Now, are you willing to take it to the next step and share it? That's the biggest part, because you can be the brightest person on the block or in your subdivision, but unless you share it, others won't know. So it's so important. That's where the community happens. That was talked about, how important community is. Sorry, I forgot about these. Jessica's got the questions. Oh, Jeff does. Oh yeah, sorry, we were supposed to do that. Yeah, that's good. Okay, here we go. First question is directed to Dr. Malthouse. What do you know about the motivation justification for Bill 36? Also, who are the authors of this bill?
We'll start with part two. The authors of the bill, this bill was brought in, it took, they say up to 5 years for this bill to be written. And the Green Party, the NDP, and additionally, who were last known as the Liberals, they were all took part in writing this bill. But at the same time, there are some characteristics of this bill which seem like it was almost too smart for them, to tell you the truth. And so I wonder personally, I'm starting to wonder whether this was written by artificial intelligence or whether it actually came from outside the country. So I can't really confirm that, but there's some aspects of this bill which just seem like the way it's written is to corral every aspect of medical care into a corner and to control it. And yet there's still a lot of things, and in that control is left this vagueness of the terms that are used in Bill 36, which allow interpretation later behind closed doors. What was this first part? I'm sorry. Does that answer the question? Not entirely.
What is motivation?
Oh, I don't know, but I
and
think,
Justification.
yeah, well, I guess you'd have to kind of guess at this because you don't really know, but it would seem that from the outcome or what the effect this will be, the motivation is to top-down control of the medical profession. Now, it seems to me that healthcare is deteriorating before our eyes, and that that whole term of build back better, maybe the plan is that you have to destroy first before you can build it back in the likeness of what you think is best. But I don't think this is the motivation is actually for the health of the population.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. The next question is for Michelle. And it says, you said transgender youth are a result of trauma. Can you elaborate?
I said gender dysphoria is listed as a trauma symptom. Okay, so generally, actually, it's a complex trauma symptom. So oftentimes, young people who suffer from gender dysphoria, if you let this run its course, they will come out the other side as soon as they get through puberty. In fact, a really high percentage do come out the other side. We're not, their kids right now aren't getting appropriate counseling. Nobody's attacking the trauma aspect of things. They just simply don't, they just simply are heading for surgeries, identity changes. This is not confirming kids' identities. It's kind of destroying it. So, so for the most part, gender dysphoria is listed as a trauma symptom. So, and when kids actually do transition, when you get into adult transgenders, we have a high suicidality rate or attempted suicide. We have a high imprisonment, and those that are in prison are actually usually in prison for severe sexual crimes. So something isn't working here. If that's what the end result is. I don't know if that helped your answer or not.
I think that's pretty close.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Next question to Lana. Why are your nurses not just walking out?
You want the truth or do you want a fluffy answer?
We'd rather have she asked truth or fluffy. What do we want? Okay, there's your answer.
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb and probably lose my job for saying this. VIHA has such a monopoly on this island. They rule. And you mess with VIHA, you'll be lucky to work in a hearing aid clinic. And walking out and go where? You're still under VIHA's thumb, their umbrella. And I mean, I've been a nurse for 40 years. And I still don't want to walk out. I mean, yeah, I'd like to work in a flower shop, but you know, I just feel I can only speak for myself and what my friends say. We still have a lot to give and a lot we want to give. We have a lot of energy, and there's still so much we love about our jobs. They're not all as I described. There's wonderful, wonderful people out there. So why aren't we walking out? Well, what are our options? We're nurses. And like I say, on an island that if you look at the geography, just what VIHA controls, it's not like there are a bunch of health authorities that you could say, you know what, buzz off. I'm going somewhere else. So I think that's the biggest reason. In fact, I'm going to say I kind of know that's the biggest reason.
So thank you. I think it goes along with the saying that also being a nurse is not necessarily just seen as a job, but there's a calling to it. And sometimes when there's a calling in your heart, you can't just walk away from that.
Well, there's a wonderful, wonderful pleasure about being a nurse. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
it
right.
just, right now, it's tough.
Yeah, yeah. Next question for you, Michael. And maybe the question needs a bit more specifics, but it says, why does the legal society not take the province to court on this issue?
It is. Although, so, yeah. Yeah. I was going to say only half jokingly, I hope they've announced that they are going to. There's going to be a legal challenge to this if it passes. There is a very live issue about whether the provincial government has constitutional authority to do this. And so that will eventually get litigated. I guess a couple of things. One, tongue in cheek, I hope they've properly retained the person to argue that before they try to get rid of them. And I guess my other answer to that is this. There'll be a legal answer to whether this is constitutionally permissible, right? Court will eventually answer that probably 5 years from now. But that's not the test that should be applied to whether something is a good idea. A judge in court doesn't tell you whether legislation is a good idea, wise, well considered, balanced, sensible, or any of that. They just answer the question, is that constitutionally permissible? And that should not be the threshold. That's one of the things that I must say I find so irritating watching political debates about things like justice policy or this, where the terms of reference are, is this constitutional? Is it legally permissible? It's sort of like asking in the medical context, if you're trying to determine the correct dosage of a drug, to figure out what would kill the patient and then just backing it off just a bit, right? Sure, that might be permissible. You might be lawfully permitted to do that, but that doesn't say that that's a good idea. This particular piece of legislation is a disaster, right? From the point of view of living in a free and democratic society and the sort of place that we want to live. If you think it's a good idea that you can have an independent lawyer who's not answering to the government, it's a disaster. That doesn't require a constitutional analysis from the Supreme Court of Canada. That requires you to think carefully about whether you think it's a good idea to have the regulator of the lawyer you're hiring beholden to a bunch of political priorities of the government of the day. And that's a different question, and it shouldn't take you 5 years to answer it.
Thank you very much, Michael. Adam, a question for you. Can you provide some details of Bill 36 passing? I heard it was passed late in the night with very few MLAs present. Is this the case?
Nothing happens late in the night in the legislature anymore. Even the Friday rules, I mean, we used to get out at 6 o'clock. Imagine that work all the way to 6, but we changed the hours of the day. So we got out at 5:30 so those folks could catch their helijet and catch the ferry back to Vancouver. So no, it was not a late night sitting. Bill 36, similar to some of the other bills that we talked about, did have closure invoked. Shirley Bond was just asking question after question after question. I don't even think she got through a third of the bill. And government said, we're done debating this and we're moving on. So, I mean, that might be late night for some folks, but yeah, definitely not. We weren't sitting till 2 a.m, that's for sure.
So thanks, Adam. Question for you, Stephen. Would you, here it goes, it says, would you please ask Stephen if he would please run as an independent in the provincial election for Nanaimo?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, but maybe I'm going to have to ask Adam what it's like to run as an independent, and what do you feel that maybe you could make just a comment, what it's like to be an independent versus being a member of a party?
You can do and say what you want. You can show up at events like this. I met with, I won't say which other elected official. He said, you're going to that town hall meeting. I mean, you shouldn't be doing that. And thinking, I don't know which side of the Rutherford Road you guys live on, but I don't really care. I mean, it's you are an active, engaged group of people that want to talk to an elected official. I'm here to listen, so this is great. So I can vote how I want. I've got some private members bills I'm working on. My office budget is twice as much as it would be otherwise, and so I have a lawyer in my office that's not got her credentials recognized yet, and all she's doing is helping I think we're up to 5 foreign trained doctors in our community that aren't currently working as doctors. One of them I just met with today, he's pulling after tax $3 grand a month, working his tail off. and he was the head of gerontology in another country and just wants to be a doctor. And so we're able to, as an independent, I don't have to worry about, the political ramifications of saying, hey, government, you got this one wrong. We've got grant writing services we do through the office. Any nonprofit that wants help with getting things done, we're able to do that. We're not stepping on toes. We've got a health center we're working on in Parksville. Every time we hit a barrier, we just get it done. Oh, can't find an architect. That's fine. We're just going to hire someone, get it done. We need to have the business plan vetted by an accountant. We're not going to wait for Island Health. And we got some quotes on this facility. Island Health has a doctor's office they're working on in Coombs. Cheryl's going to get stuck paying 40% of that. They have a plan for 4 patient exam rooms, and they're going to come back to you guys with a $2 million price tag. We're working on one in Parksville with 13 patient exam rooms, $800,000. This is the difference when you actually just focus on getting things done.
We have another question for Adam here through the Zoom event that we're having going on right now. It says, it's a 2-part question. Why did Adam vote on motion 3, which was against our right to protest? And why did you not vote on bills 31 and 36?
I'm pretty sure I voted on Bill 36. I'd have to go through Hansard and see how I voted on these. Motion 3, so that'll be a motion on the order paper. I mean, I don't mind. I've got no cell coverage here, so whoever's on Zoom there, if you want to give me some clarity on those. I believe Bill 36 went through when I was, I think I was still in the party at that point, but I'm not sure. I'd have to go through Hansard and just see where everything's at. Oh. Bill 31, Emergency Management Act. Yeah, I didn't vote on that one. So a division was called, and I was occupied dealing with an emergency in the constituency. Bill 36 says that I was absent. I'd have to check the dates on when that was. Bill 44, I did not vote in. Oh, yes, it's got a check mark, so I voted against Bill 44. Motion 3, the motion voted to condemn individuals. Oh, motion 3, I was in the party. That was an ugly day. So motion 3, this was brought forward by Doug Routley, and it was a motion that basically called on the House. Yeah, thank you so much. It was a motion that was calling on the House to condemn the protests that took place in Ottawa. That motion was very political. We had a lot of BC United members that just didn't show up for the vote, and the NDP had a heck of a time with that. Nobody on the NDP side wanted to speak to it or do anything with it, and we all voted on it. This was when you're in a party, you're in a whipped vote situation. There are things that you bite your tongue on, and you sort of go, "Well, I'm in the party. I'll take the good with the bad." I'm happy I don't have to do that anymore, and I'm looking forward to continuing in this role after the next election.
Thank you, Michael. For Adam, Shirley.
Michelle, I have another question for you. It says, so how do you suggest we approach the trauma epidemic?
That's a really good question. I'm really glad you asked me that. As you're making your communities strong, the stronger your community is, the more the traumatized are going to see you as the safe place. The more their eyes are going to turn towards you. Making people feel safe is really, really important. During COVID, I had a lot of people say to me, well, I just tried to offer this person some information and kaboom. And I never approach people that way. Sometimes I would get busy. I'd have to go to this little local gas station for milk, 11 o'clock at night. There was always a kid standing behind there, and they were always masked up. And one young man, his rashes up the side of his face from those masks were just disturbing. And I used to say, wow, I feel so sorry for you. It's got to be really tough, standing there with that mask on all those hours. And they'd say, it is, I can't breathe. I'd say, well, whenever there's nobody in here and you have a break, you go take that off. That can't be good for you. And they'd smile and say, promise I will. It's never going to be about what you say to them, because they are not going to process that. But it will always be about how you make them feel. So that's what's really important. So extending your hand, families that have exploded, look, there's all kinds of things that you base your family structures on other than this. So reconnect and so that they feel safe and they don't feel that they're going to be attacked. That's really without care, trauma counseling, that's the best I can give you. Communities are so important. It is a real place of safety for people, and they will look to their communities if their communities are strong enough.
Next question for Michael in regards to Bill 21. What is the position of the judges, or do they have one?
That's interesting. If they have one, I wouldn't know what it is. The provincial government is supposed to consult with the judiciary before legislation that could involve them is introduced. It will also be, ultimately, they're not going to speak public on that. There's going to be some Supreme Court judge in BC that's going to make a ruling on it, and probably some Court of Appeal judges and off to the Supreme Court of Canada. So I don't know the answer to that. There may be some wrinkles we'll see early on if the government's trying to do things like have paralegals appear in Superior Court to represent the poor rather than lawyers, whether the Superior Court judges are prepared to recognize them and allow them to. So there, we may see some early signs of it, but because they're going to be called upon to answer it, they're not going to make a public position clear.
So thank you, Michael. Question for Lana. Where and what are the responses of the unions and colleges?
Just wait, where or when?
Where and what are the responses of the unions and colleges? Not sure about where, but what are the responses? I think that would be a more,
What are the responses of the union, basically?
and
That's
the
what you're
colleges,
saying?
yeah, to what you've been saying.
Well, we'll start with the union. Boy, oh boy, I'm not gonna dig myself a big hole tonight.
Well,
You get a lot of support on paper, but when you're put in front in the meeting, the support is not there. You feel pumped up, and I'm not speaking just for myself, because we talk, right? We all,
mhm.
it's, we're promised wage subsidy. It's, an investigation can be done. It doesn't happen. You're kind of led on and made to believe you're supported. But like I say, when they're put in front of the employer, it's not there. I've heard some really wicked stories. And about the college, it's really not even a factor in all of this mess. And we're a little bit confused about that. It's just, when I say no support,
Mhm.
yeah,
Well, all right. Thank you, Lana.
okay.
Next one for Dr. Malthouse. Regarding the H.O.P.A, what can people do to let the government know we want the boards to be composed of people who understand the needs of patients?
Well, there is a systemic problem with medicine in Canada, probably actually in the world, but healthcare in Canada, and particularly in our province. And so there are many different aspects to it. I don't think you're going to get this H.P.O.A taken back by the government. I don't think so. I think they're fully invested in it. And you might think the same thing, Adam, because I'm sure you've got a view on this. But I don't think they're going to repeal that act. But I do feel that at least the promises of the Conservatives of BC and some independents that I know as well is that if they get into power, they will reverse the act. So I think that getting out and voting is the most important thing that we can do at this stage to get that act out of the way. But I think the thing is, though, that we do have a problem with medicine, and I think what's happened in these last years has revealed the weaknesses. Certainly, there's a weakness in the ethics of the practitioners, and we've seen this. They haven't stood up for their patients. They're more feared of losing their jobs. I'm not saying this is right across the board, but we certainly see this flavor throughout medicine, and people have lost their trust. And so, what is it going to take for medical practitioners, healthcare practitioners to regain the trust of their patients? That's a tough one. That is tough because once once you've betrayed your patients, it's almost impossible to get them back. And unfortunately, the generation that's coming up, I don't think they're any better. I don't think they're more morally sound than the doctors that were there already. We do have to appreciate that there was a psyop done here, that propaganda through the media and so on was used to attack the doctors way back. So we've always had this idea of algorithms to treat patients, and then it eventually ends up with a pharmaceutical drug at the end of the algorithm. And so doctors have been trained that that's the way you do it. Make the diagnosis, you give the appropriate drug. And AI is going to challenge us with that, right? Because AI by patients, some studies have shown that AI is thought to be more empathetic than doctors and more accurate. And if you can't get in to see your doctor, of course, you're going to go into a booth where AI will treat you. So I think this is an issue. Ethics, morality is really important, and connecting to patients again, because most doctors are now at the end of a telephone, telehealth. Prior to that, they were looking at their computer screen and not looking at the patients. And patients judge that compassion is most evident when a doctor pays attention to them. And that's been lacking in the exam room for some time. So there are a lot of things that need to be changing. And then finally, when Rockefeller medicine came in, it was an idea of diverting the money into the hands of the regular doctors who were prescribing pharmaceuticals for everything, which was a Band-Aid at the best, stabilizing someone, but in most cases, it actually made the patient worse. So you created a revolving door of medicine where they go out, they come back in. And doctors say they don't have time for empathy because they're too busy. Because they're stuck in the paradigm where they're actually not curing people at a deep level. They're just putting Band-Aids on them, and then they go out and, another disease is being created by the side effect of the drug. So I think we need a real paradigm shift in medicine, healthcare in general, as part of the package. So we need ethics, and we need a paradigm shift. We need doctors and healthcare practitioners to figure out what makes them different from artificial intelligence. Because if you act like a machine, you will be replaced. So what makes a human different from a machine? And that's an investigation that we're all going to have to undergo here, particularly in the medical profession.
Thank you, Stephen. Michael, I have maybe a political question for you here. It says, what do you hope from the BC Conservative Party or the United Party?
Well, with respect to Bill 21, both the Conservative Party and the United Party are opposed to it. The Conservative Party issued a release saying they will oppose it, and if it is passed and they form government, they will repeal it. And the United Party has said they are opposed to it, which he would hope would translate into repealing it if they formed government, rather than just changing the political priorities from the ones of the current government to whatever the political priorities of the next government might be, which would be the worst possible outcome. So I was happy to hear about the proposal for repeal rather than just a change of political priorities, which was my concern.
Thank you, Michael. Couple more questions, and then we'll close up the meeting here. So this is to Adam. Do any of these bills touch on the tenant-landlord relations and responsibilities, that being 44, 46, and 47?
Not really, but there is another bill, and I was torn. It was just passed that changes the time it takes to kick someone out for personal use, and so that's changed from 2 months to 4 months. And it's so hard. Between the residential tenancy branch not being able to do their job, and I mean, if they see this, I know they're doing their best, but like honestly, there needs to be a complete overhaul of that organization. And the vilification of landlords. It is no surprise that we have very few people who are excited, and the high cost of construction. There's very few people excited about getting into the idea of being a landlord. So Bill 44, 46, 47, not really a big impact. It'll make it easier for rental buildings to move forward if they have the land already and the performance makes sense. But yeah, the bill that did just pass, that, like I said, I was on the fence. Someone close to me was evicted with 2 months notice, and gosh, it's hard to find a property right now. And so that one did pass, and that's something that will come through and very soon impact landlords. Again, just another nail in the coffin for the private rental industry.
So thank you, Adam. Thank you. Lana, another one for you. What does WorkSafe say about the effects of drugs on employees?
Drugs on the employees?
The effects of drugs
Okay, works, well, the sound supportive. Now, WorkSafe, we go through them. I'm going through WorkSafe right now. And it's a full-time job, all the meetings, all the documentation you need to support. It's literally a full-time job. And what we want is compensation for, missing work. For example, just today I got a text from one of my friends, another incident. I won't go on with it, but he had 25 pipes on them. Some were broke, 2 carries got cut. There was a big altercation in the room with him with his bag and the nurses then wrestling with this, nut bag. And she reported it to WorkSafe and their only question was, well, why are you giving him 20 pipes? And it's just, we have to prove so much. And in fact, in my case, I was in there alone. And many times we are in there alone and we need a witness. So in fact, that's what I was going through today. I don't have a witness. We come out and we share the news with each other. But another one of my friends, she was pushed and shoved and by the violent patient that we are scared of. Well, nobody saw it. She's been off since September. No money, nothing. And so, I feel like every question is like digging me a deeper hole. But we have to prove damages again and again, and it takes a lot of proof. We also need a psychiatric assessment before we can get 1 penny, and they say that can take up 6 to 8 months. Well,
Oh,
we need to work. So everything is very disappointing.
Mhm,
It's very
mhm.
anticlimactic,
Mhm.
and it does not feel overly supportive. We all try, but once again, it's just, it is a full-time job just dealing with them, to have an investigation done to say, yeah, no, nothing. And you have to wait and wait and wait and wait.
Hmm.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's the end of the question for tonight. We've got a little bit of closing to do here, but I want to thank all our speakers tonight. Weren't they great up here? And they had to dig deep. They had to dig deep to be honest with their answers. And that's what we want, honesty. Thank you guys so very much. If you want to have a seat, we'll just close things up here. So there was a lot to take in tonight. And some of you may still be thinking, but I'm just one person. How can I make a difference? Let me, this is just to be a couple minutes here. We just want to say our thank yous and gratitudes. Let me share with you a few historical facts that I found quite amazing and hope that you do too. And this is the power of one vote. One vote made Oliver Cromwell Lord Protector of the Commonwealth of England in 1645. One vote caused Charles I to be executed in 1649. One vote, little ad lib there. One vote decided that the Americans would speak English rather than German in 1776. It was one vote that elected Thomas Jefferson president in 1800. It was one vote that saved President Andrew Johnson from impeachment in 1868. And it was one vote that changed France from a monarchy, to a republic in 1875. And more recently here in BC, there was one vote that elected Al Passarell to the BC legislature in 1979. One vote matters. Your vote matters. Your influence over your network of friends and relatives and neighbors matter. Take to heart what we've heard tonight. It's so, so important. Use that when it's time to vote. Encourage your family and friends. The power of one vote can make such a difference. We have a provincial election coming this fall, and it's your vote that's going to have that voice. I would like to take a few minutes and thank for a number of people here for making this event happen. Took a lot of work behind closed doors and dining rooms and balconies, but most of all, thanks everyone for coming out tonight. Thank you to Pastor Gordon Destiny Worship Center for allowing us to host this here. And Pastor Gord also took care of all the audio visual and made it all happen despite the little complications that we had at the beginning. Thanks to Pastor Robert for hosting and co-moderating tonight's event. Thank you to the volunteers from our local Mensa group for helping out with parking, and our first aid and safety team provided by ABCB First Aid Training on Terminal Avenue. Thank you to our musician, David Hart, who gently led us into the beginning of the meeting. I'm going to wear out your hands here. Thank you to our wonderful speakers who brought an information to enlighten and motivate us. To our video group who have been here streaming tonight's live event. We have it going on here and here. There's Brian from Storm Rider News. He's been at almost all the town halls, covering Port Alberni on Wednesday, Comox Valley last night, and here tonight. So he's a warrior out there. And to our local writer, producer, and lead videographer, Zach Tanner, who's been broadcasting from the back there. To the last minute volunteers who stepped up, which include my wife, Linda, Alice, Sherry, Jen, thank you. And the team that put this event together. As hold your applause, I just want those that are still here to just stand up and we can applaud at the end. The dynamic duo that started this all for Nanaimo, Shirley and Carl, please stand up. The founders of BC Town Hall, Lynn and Paul, thank you. Our local media duo, Dr. Norm DiTilio and Dr. Sean Thomas. Medical, that is. Our social media team, Heather Lynn and Mary Jo. Our energized couple who helped and inspired us, Jeff and Jessica. Our creative PR and sign creation team who get all the signs out there, Dean and Laurie. And our timer tonight and lead coordinator for our video feeds tonight, good old David over here, keeping it all in control. Let's give them all a big hand. Okay, and as in the words of some famous person said, oh, and there's one more thing, Stephen Jobs. What's that? Oh, right. Don't forget, we have live streamed this event tonight. Over the next day or two, please, please, please share the link to your friends, to our YouTube recording, our town, or on the town hall site, or on a Facebook page also, it'll be there. Just share it. Campbell River had their event and they had 16,000 shares. Do you think we can do better? Yeah, that's what I want to hear. Let's make this international. For me, it's been an amazing night to see this all happen. And I want to thank you for the experience that I've been able to share with you. I'd like to now turn it over to Pastor Robert to have some concluding remarks.
Thank you for your time. Just 3 more minutes. Hopefully I will speak funny very quickly. I must bring your attention to the Nanaimo action table in the lobby, where you will find a list of some of the topics mentioned by citizens for presentations over the next weeks or months. Please complete one of these, check the topics that interest you most, and add any others that you find interesting or you would like dealt with. You'll also find a table that is the Concerned Citizens Action Table for those of you who would want to do more. Fill out a form to sign up and to receive more information on becoming involved in making a change in our amazing community. We encourage you to go to the BC Town Halls, as Frank has just said. That's BC Town Halls 2024.ca, and see the next town halls that are going to be available that you can attend. And please visit our website, nanaimotownhall.ca. It's vitally important. There, when you go to that site, you can see the Get Involved tab to click on so that you too can become part of the bringing awareness to the people in Nanaimo. These town halls are a great movement to bring the grassroots back to the community involvement. We ask that you be involved in spreading the word about town halls in order to reach out to others in Nanaimo and beyond. Secondly, talk to your friends and your family about what you've heard tonight. We have to keep this information going, and we keep building everybody up in this. The BC Town Halls 2024 website gives a great idea about hosting a town home gathering. It's a potluck or barbecue. Town halls are for any size group from 4 to 400. The founders, Lynn Ross and Paul Jordan, have provided all the resources you need to organize a town hall through their website. Again, bctownhalls2024.ca. And finally, you can help us financially. We are all volunteers who care about Nanaimo and the province of British Columbia. We can't do these town halls without funding, and realize you know that. All donations are welcome. We are accepting donations at the back of the room, into the foyer, and also by e-transfers. We had an anonymous donor who provided us with the initial funding for this very event. Thank you. Please see the Nanaimo townhall.ca website for links to donate. I know Frank has mentioned thanks, but a special thanks goes to Shirley for her commitment and steadfastness in putting this all together, Shirley. And we just thank you once again. They say dynamite comes in small packages. I think that was very true. Donations accepted, cash, e-transfer, and checks. Now, important to remember, e-transfer can be made to Nanaimo TH, one word, Nanaimo TH at H.P.O.A. Checks may be payable to Nanaimo Town Hall, and you can see the website for that information as well. And please, once again, remember the Zoom link of our video this evening, and please share the link with those family members and friends. I also want to take this moment to thank Frank Pluter for doing a great job, Frank. And all the volunteers to make this Nanaimo Town Hall a success. Thank you so much to all of you attending tonight, enduring this long evening in a rather warm environment. You may wish to take advantage of the short time following this meeting to mix with those maybe you have not got to chat with. Again, thank you for joining with us and being part of Nanaimo Town Hall. Have a wonderful weekend.
Before you all go, I'd like you all to remember what happened at the beginning of all this way of dismantling our society in Nanaimo and other towns. They attacked our children, they attacked our babies, they gave them poison through vaccines and killed them and made them injured. Remember what you did or did not do. Get your grassroots anger up and go after these people because they're after you and your grandchildren. Don't ever forget that. We're in a war, do not step back.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Hello. Thanks for watching, everybody. So this is Storm Rider News. We're going to do a little bit of impromptu interview with some of the volunteers that helped produce the event. Right here with us now, we've got Frank Pluta. So, Frank, to start with, thank you so much for everything that you've done. And I see we got 3 rounds of applause, and you probably needed a 4th anyway. You did a great job. Thank you for everything that you did today. What prompted you to get involved like this?
Well, thank you so much, Brian. And it's you that I want to thank for coming out and recording this, getting this out to people, being the warrior on the road, like I mentioned, you know, hitting 3 events in a row. That's incredible. We've been working on this for about 6 weeks. What made me get involved? I was asked. I started getting involved after the last election when I didn't make it in for council. And after licking my wounds, I basically said, well, what else can I do? And so we started off with fighting against some of the issues that were coming up in our community. One was the AAP process, which is the alternative approval process. And through a collective group of people and having a lawyer on board with us to actually look through the act, he found failures in their compliance with the act itself. That happened. They had to pull it back. They tried it again. They had to pull it back a second time. Now we're just waiting to see what they're going to do next. So this is spun off from that group and another group to create this town hall. We're so excited. Carl and Shirley called upon me as well as Dr. Norm, and they've made a huge difference in doing this.
So getting some education, like learning about the things that are happening, that brought you into this is partly what it sounds like.
Well, when I see things that are kind of buried in the headlines of the news, for example, the AAP, oh, this is just going through, it's whatever, it's okay. You need 20% of the voters to be able to keep this from passing. I'm going like, whoa, 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 stop this. There's something wrong. We're used to a referendum. We're used to a referendum, how that works. 51%, it gets passed, the funding gets good. But they're trying to sneak through legislation that you have to vote against it, otherwise it goes through automatically. And we're not talking about 5 or 10 or $15 million projects. It's a 4-phase project that was provided here to the tune of $160 million. How would you like that just to sneak through? And where are the drawings? Where are the plans? Where are the budgets? All those weren't even made available until just before the close of the first AAP process. And even now, we don't have full disclosure. And that's what we're asking for. We're the community. We're the residents that are collecting taxes from. 8% bump this year. I don't know what it's next year, but, you know, after a while, we'll be taxed out of our homes.
Full disclosure is part of a contract. Transparency, a meeting of the minds. This is basically the definition of a contract. So if that information is not being made available to the general public, we don't really have consent, do we?
There's so much like that. All these bills that are going through the provincial legislature. Our MLAs are representing us, voting, not voting, yes, no. We don't know because we're, hate to say, a bit of an apathetic Canadian society that is okay, that's all right, let's get to go, let that go, until it finally bites us in the ass, I hate to say. We're starting to see what Bill 36 does. I lost a previous doctor of mine to Alberta because he did not want to put up with us. We're seeing what's happening to the rest of the medical system there. The drugs that are going rampant in the hospitals, in Dufferin Crescent, which isn't even a hospital.
That was incredible and shocking information that our nurse friend Lana delivered tonight. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I had no idea that it was that bad. I knew that it was bad. Like I see it on the streets, right? And I've heard some references to things that are being allowed to happen in the hospitals, but nurses and care aides pouring vodka for addicts to wash down dilaudid with. I mean, this is, how can anybody allow that to be a policy that stands?
My mom was from Germany. She's passed on now, but she was one of my greatest teachers. She had a German saying that I think is appropriate today, even though it's roughly translated. It says, when God wants to punish mankind for his wrongdoings, he'll take his common sense away. And I know there's a lot of politicians that are running on common sense platforms, but the truth is we're lacking the common sense. And when we see what's going on left, right, and center, we're not willing to stand up to do something about it. Well, we are here tonight. That's what the town hall is about. That's what all the other ones do. We want to inform the public. We want to let them know what's going on behind closed doors, open doors, but basically they're not making it public in the right way. And most of the media, yours excluded, is hiding it behind its veil of words and softening the blow of what these things are, like the AAP process. They said, oh, it's just another thing. We'll just go through it, blah, blah. But to me, it just did not read right. And that's what got me back involved in things.
Yeah, it's serious stuff that's coming down the pipe, and some of it's already landed, some of it's already affecting everybody, and they still don't know about it. And so, yeah, what happened here tonight was a fantastic process, a little bit of shocking information for those who don't already have it, and for those who do, reminders and leveling up in our education and some encouragement to get together and start working at this. What are the solutions? We're getting educated, so what are the steps? And I think one of the primary things that I heard is get to know your candidates, and more so check in with them personally and find out where they actually stand. What are they going to do about these things that are happening, and then vote. That seems to be a
And once they're elected, it's important that you check in on them there too. See if they're following what they promised to do, because unfortunately, that seems to be an analogy for what a politician does. Make a promise, get elected. Oh, what promises? So we want to hold them more accountable. And as issues come up, especially applying to the community as a whole, we need our input. The province is trying to block that right now to keep us from having the public input on official community plans. Wants to muffle us when it comes to discussing anything that's been already passed in council.
right. So there's something there that you said. It seems like there's even, to some extent, a loss of trust between the people and the politicians, that the people are capable or have the avenue available to hold them to account. Because as you likely have taken part in and seen over the last 4 years, there has been a really dedicated group of people that have been attempting to do so, and have been met with, via letter writing campaigns, through, going to the MLA's offices and attempting to have meetings with them to discuss other viewpoints and other information that's not being brought to us through the mainstream media and so on. And they're being dismissed. I guess that is kind of how it seems, right? So when we talk about accountability, how do we rebuild that trust between the people and their representatives, and not just trust, but a bona fide actual response? So when the people, and I don't know that this is a question I'm actually asking you to give the answer to, but it's a question that I have, how do we actually hold them to account?
Well, we had a discussion in our men's group. Our men's group is called Mensa, for lack of a better term. It's not the S one, it's a Z one, Mensa, the ones who want to be smart. Anyway, we said, how do we best attack this and have some effect? So we thought federal level, yeah, that's a bit outside of where we can reach. Provincial, again, maybe outside there, but we can work municipally because we're close to home. A council meeting is only a few miles away or kilometers away. You can attend those. You can start giving feedback. You can be thrown out like Alan was at the last council meeting because the mayor disagreed with what he was saying and said, that's enough and you're out of here. How would you like that to happen to you? In a free society, as we call ourselves, that you can't even express your opinion. Now, he wasn't being belligerent.
So there was no belligerence. He was thrown out based on a difference of opinion. How does that happen?
Well, he called him out on some of the statements that he made in previous council meetings, and he did not like being called out. So it's a really sad thing that that we're losing those freedoms. I had a fellow work on drywall for me back in the early 1990s from Romania. Now, I've been to East Germany to visit my family, so I know what it's like on a communist side. He also being from another communist country. So I said, asked him, so what's it like being here in Canada? And I was expecting an enthusiastic answer. His answer, it's okay. I'm going like, what do you mean it's okay? Took me 15 minutes to wear him down to get an answer. And here's the honest truth. This is like the early 90s, 92 or 93. He said, in Romania, we know what it's like to get our freedoms. In Canada, you cannot see them being taken away. And no more so than the last 4 or 5 years here, where it's been eroding so quickly that we can't do this, hear the truth. We can't speak the truth. Now we can't even think the truth because the thought police is coming into it. What is going on, Canada? Step up, fight back. Don't let this happen. It's up to you. It's up to me. That's why I'm here. I want to do something to make that difference.
Frank, thanks so much for all you've been doing and for your participation here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Frank Pluta, and he was our moderator tonight and part of the core team organizing this event. And you ran for office as well, you said.
Yep, I ran for council, didn't make it, but we're working on other strategies to change that tide because it's being manipulated by part of the population that's.
Okay, you heard it, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to work from the ground level at the municipality, at the municipal level. We're going to go and see the people that will be right in front of us. And if they throw us out, let's get some press in the room too so we can get the word out. Yeah. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me today. Yeah.
I appreciate you and all your help and all your work.
I'm happy to do it. Wouldn't miss it. Yeah. Thanks. Well, I think we're going to see if we can get one more interview. Hang in there for just a moment. I'm going to go and find one of the people who helped organize the event. One moment. Hi, everybody. I'm back. Storm Rider News here in Nanaimo again. I'm here with Shirley. Could you tell us your last name even too? And
Shirley Kingston.
so Shirley's the one who initiated this event. Is that right?
Well, there was one other person that had called and was interested, but for some reason he was involved in other issues, and so nothing was happening. I just put forward my name because I felt the Lord was telling me I had to help. That was all. I was just supposed to help. But then I was kind of on my own.
Lynn's here with you too.
And yeah, well, she could probably tell the story better than me.
Well, we'd love to hear it from you too.
Okay, because it all started with a word from the Lord to Paul that you do town halls.
Fantastic.
So it all started with God, and he orchestrated the whole thing. I can't take any credit because it was all him. Like, he put the most amazing team together. He gave us the most wonderful speakers. And this is something he wanted us to do. And that's why we do it, because he cares about our communities.
I feel personally like the actions that I've taken to support BC Town Halls 2024 have come very easily. Like, there's support for me to do this thing that I'm doing as well. So I resonate with what you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah, we're just driven to do it because we care about our fellow citizens, and we care that they find out what's going on. So we can be a community together. It brings us all together. And that's what God blesses, right? Coming together for the right thing to do, and take some action to change it.
So is this how God works through us?
Definitely. Definitely. It's all him, and I can only give him the credit.
Thanks for taking the time to share the story with us tonight, Shirley, and thank you so much for all the actions that you took and following those messages that were coming to you to get involved and to reach out to the people that helped to connect this event bring it to all of us. We're also grateful to have been here tonight. I know that.
Thankful it went so well, and there was a vision given about the Lord seeing something in the clouds, a lady at our church. And the word that she saw in this vision was peace, to make it a peaceful time together, to come together in peace and in his will. And that's what he did.
Beautiful. Beautiful story. Thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you as well, by the way. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. You take good care, and
If he can,
let's keep going with these town halls, hey?
he can use an old biddy like me. He can use anybody.
Yeah, he's put me to good use a few times. Lynn, how are you tonight?
I'm great, thank you. I've got behind me Lana, the nurse that spoke tonight, and she's going to hopefully share a few words with you.
Yeah, I'd love to talk with Lana.
Yeah, and those words were very powerful. I don't know about anybody in the audience that's still there, but I was in tears. I was very upset. A lot of people were quite emotional, and this should not be happening in our communities.
Yeah, no, that was pretty shocking information that she shared. And I know some of us know some of it, but to hear those firsthand accounts of, the actual stuff that's happening in the hospitals, it was unbelievable. Lana, would you come join us? Hi, I'm Brian Edgar with Storm Rider News.
How do you do?
I'm quite well, thank you. And yourself? Thank you for coming tonight.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Now, Lana, I wanted to ask you if you could tell people what to do to help this situation or to help the nurses, what would you say to them?
You know what? Off the top of my head, and I have been asked this before, you need to believe us, and you need to believe that it's worse than what you read in the news. Anything you hear, like I say, Adrian Dix, this is not true. Anything you hear, even that there are weapons and drugs, you need to picture how disgusting it's become.
Would I, as a news person, as the press, be able to go in and witness some of this? Do you know?
I would probably think absolutely not, unless you went incognito and came in as a visitor,
They wouldn't let me in.
as the press. They don't want that out. They don't want that out. No. You know what? In spite of what you hear me say and what we all in this room believe, what people need to understand too is that there are many of the decision makers support this. So our leader, in fact, supports this.
Outrageous.
Yes, and one thing, do I have 1 minute?
Yeah.
So
Take as much time as you need.
I had to speedy it up there, but when I brought it up in the meeting of the pregnant girls and these girls that are childbearing age, where are the studies? Where's the documentation to support that they are safe, that we are not creating drug addicts or,
Oh, I see. For them to be using while they're pregnant, for that to be supported by the government?
no, that these nurses and healthcare aides are exposed to the drugs. So picture me if I'm 25 and
I understand now.
and so unless it's smoked, it's odorless. And so is it really odorless? Or if they get it on their clothes, a baby coded in ER, a mummy took her little baby and changed on the change table. That baby survived, but that child coded. And there was no look of fentanyl there. But I was told as a later, it was, Lana, calm down. If this whole desk was splattered with fentanyl, you could do this. She smacked her hand like this, smack, and she simulated licking her hand from her wrist to the tip, and she said, you'd be fine. And if for some reason something happened, just get another nurse to Narcan you. Well, I've never smoked a cigarette. I don't want fentanyl in me. I don't want Narcan in me. I don't.
That statement doesn't even make any sense. My understanding of fentanyl is that it's sometimes up to 50 times more potent than the most potent natural opioids available. You cannot lick your hand and be okay.
No. This is the support we have when we are scared, when we don't want to code at work, and like I say, we have pregnant girls. That upsets me terribly. that is no documentation to support that those pregnant girls can come in and there's, these people's bags of drugs beside us. So what can people
So
do?
you're talking about exposure, basically.
Yes, yeah, I'm not talking about them doing drugs. It's just there's no protection for us. Yeah, and people need to listen and be as angry as we are, and and raise, raise some heck. I mean, if you walk into if you have a parent that's in a room and there's three people smoking, you need to be angry and mad and and not stop. Don't stop talking. And there are enough of me now. I think I'm probably a little more vocal than some of them, but I also have more experience, and I'm, a little bit more resilient. And these young girls, they don't. This is sad too. They don't understand how sick it is because this is all they know. These young new nurses and new care aides, they don't know how sick this really is. So now they have a different level of tolerance. So I think we all just have to not give up. And that question to me about why don't you just, leave? Well, why should we? Why should we? Why?
The policy should leave.
Yeah. Like, why should we be bullied out of there? So every facility can, become like that. But again, there are people that support it and don't mind it. So it's an uphill battle.
I don't think the question was posed to you in the context of like you should just leave, but kind of like why haven't you? What keeps you there? Like why is it so important to you to stay there that you would, even though you're being subjected to such difficult conditions?
Obviously, our goal is, first of all, it's shocking and it's escalating. So, you think, well, it's got to get better. You're just kind of waiting for that support. But when I said it's lawless, it feels lawless now.
So I had another question for you, and maybe you already answered it in your talk. The experiences that you're talking about, is that Nanaimo? Is that Vancouver Island hospitals? Is this yeah, the weapons, your personal experiences?
Absolutely, and I have a lot of friends, and I still keep in touch. I've worked so many places. So Manitoba, Toronto are places I keep in touch with. San Antonio, where previously worked, and just we're my my friends are nurses, and we, like I say, we talk, and I'm also friends with somebody that's very high up in the union. I'm not going to say what position she's in because that will divulge, and I just don't want to do that right now. And she is horrified. Now, there's lots of junk going on in Manitoba too, but the fact that it's happening.
You're talking about the BC Nurses Union?
No, my friend in Manitoba, and she's high up in the Manitoba Nurses Union. I'm sorry, and but like I say, I don't want to say, but she knows what's going on, and she is horrified with what I'm telling her, and I talk to nurses in various places in Manitoba. My friend in Toronto, and again, there's stuff going on everywhere. But
So it's not a BC thing, although we have something particular happening here. It differs somehow, doesn't it? But it's
happening here is what's going on inside closed doors. So we're not talking about them hanging out in the field and smoking and, and I don't really make all that my business. I mean, I'm overwhelmed enough with my job, but having them be so violent to us and not be arrested, the weapons and not be arrested.
right, and the proofs that you're required to give to be taken seriously.
Exactly. And needing witnesses. And then you need this psychiatric assessment.
And so that's a process that's chilling. It prevents people from engaging in the process.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And actually, those are really good words. And you caught on to that. And, to wait 6 to 8 months just for a psychiatrist, and then, it's still, you're waiting up to a year with no salary. And, we need to work. You can't just sit waiting. And that's it's a discouraging process. It doesn't encourage you. And it's
So the kinds of things that you've witnessed personally in your work life, are those happening all across BC? Are you in touch with other people in other hospitals, or do you know? Like, is this something that's more local here? Is it particular to one hospital, or is this everywhere? Because we know that the addiction, the safe supply, the crime in the streets, that's not just Vancouver Island. That's happening all over the place, particularly BC, it seems.
all I can comment on in that is, first of all, I don't have any nurse friends in the Lower Mainland or in British Columbia. All I know is what I know here. But what I can tell you is we all talk, and somebody's got a friend everywhere, and the in the nursing world, it is said that Vancouver Island is the worst. And it's simply because of what is being allowed inside closed doors, inside the rooms.
Worst in terms of quality of care.
Well, I personally think Vancouver Island's not think, I know for a fact, it's the worst care. Now, that does not just include the drugs, right? We're talking care, but that's another topic. And I mean, the
My apologies. I didn't mean to mislead that way. Yeah.
standards.
Just for clarity's sake.
Yeah, so standards of care would be how often someone is bathed or cleaned or, those sorts of things. And so, like I say, that's another talk.
So can you speak to that just a little bit as well?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
How are we doing here on Vancouver Island?
you failed. You failed. I can tell you so many statistics of like what I've witnessed. Even myself, I took a contract. And I was expected to look after 74 people myself on a night shift. Not happening. And I said, it's not happening.
One nurse looking after 74 people?
Yes, because the care aides were so overwhelmed. So I would be functioning as a care aide and a nurse for 74 people. That's unacceptable. I can tell you another one, 105 people with 3 care aides and a foreign nurse who wasn't licensed in Canada. I picked up 3 night shifts, and it's midnight. We start at 11. It's midnight, and they're all sacked out. They're all sacked out. I would go to work, and there are people. I do rounds, and I check every single room. That's how I start my day. Unless there's somebody sick, of course, and you have to go to them first. But I do my rounds.
Just have a check-in.
I make sure I put eyes on every single person. It's just what I do. And I can't tell you how many people I have found dead, on the floor dead. They're cold, they're blue, this didn't just happen. They're not looked after. I've gone to work, I can wring the pee out of people's hair. Like, do you want to hear this? You might want to edit.
I want to hear it all.
Oh,
I want to hear it all. If you feel safe to say it, we need to know it, because otherwise it will continue.
so I would go to work and, I don't like to shoot my mouth off until I've got my facts straight. Because sometimes,
Absolutely. Please make sure that everything you say here is strictly the facts.
what I mean is at work, I don't want to shoot my mouth off. I don't want to say like, make assumptions. But there would be this little lady with, feces and urine. Just the feces was so melted from she in it so long, dripping down her wheelchair. And so, okay, well, maybe that, it could happen once. But then I'm realizing I see her every day, every day, every day. And okay, no, this isn't a one.
So now this is standard of care. This isn't a mistake or
Here's where it's a travesty is they, whoever they, you want to hear who they is, doesn't matter, will they do their rounds. So say at 4 o'clock, they need to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people up just to get a start on day shift. They will get people up with a dirty brief and dress them, put them in a wheelchair, and then expect them and take them for breakfast, expect them to eat breakfast with a dirty brief, and just leave them, and then feed them lunch, and then they get cleaned after lunch. That does not meet the standard of care. The care patient ratio does not meet the standard of care. Not doing rounds every 2 hours. I've seen a woman strangled in a sling. because she was put on this slung over the toilet. That does not meet standards. You do not.
How does that happen? It's just a shortage of people?
No, it's just lack of standards. And when they're all trained, by the same couple of schools, and it's like the standard has just been absolutely diluted. And
That just seems ridiculous.
when you work with your colleague and they're in the same line of thinking and they'd rather play on their phone, I mean, it's power in numbers, right? I have seen employees just leave the shift, and that's happened to me. It's like, where is everybody? They just leave and leave me with, okay, it's a different facility actually, 75 people that have no care aides and no nurse, and nobody tells me until I figure it out an hour later. So they're all unattended. I mean, I could go on and on and on, right?
I think that's good, but it's not that I don't want to hear it. It's enough to know that those stories are there and to hear a few of them so that people can get samples so they have an understanding of just how bad this is and the fact that it's actually real. Beyond that, we don't, in this context, need a full-on litany. In a courtroom, perhaps we need a full-on litany.
Cautious up there. It's a church, right? I mean, and there's just certain things you don't say in a church. I mean, there's so much more I could say. And like I say, even this, you might want to edit, a couple things out. Oh, okay. So it's out.
Yeah.
But that's the truth. That's what I see.
Right.
And when I say it's my mission to help bring the standards up, I mean, how could I not? How could I not? It infuriates me.
Well, thank you so much for everything you brought to us information-wise tonight, and your strong heart and your courage to speak out in the face of a lack of care within the field is what it sounds like, and to be someone who's willing to point that out and help us all get educated as to these facts so that we can stand with you. We can support you in some way so that this can change, because any right-thinking human would not want it to be this way. And if it is this way, then if it's down to us to take it from here, then that's what we must do.
Yeah, those are great words. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lana, can you please tell us your last name one more time?
Lekapoy.
And is there any way that people could connect with you if they want to more directly than this?
Well,
If you're open to that?
yeah. Is it safe to give my email like this? So first initial last name, LLEKOPOY @gmail.com. And I do have a business, my nurse consulting. And so you can go to my website at Lekapoy, LEKOPOY consulting.com.
One more time with that, please.
Lekapoy consulting.com.
All right. Thanks so much for your time tonight. Can I give you a little hug?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lana. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you again sometime. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up here. This has been a fantastic evening at the Destiny. Oh my gosh, I haven't got the name down yet. The Destiny Worship Hall, Worship Center on Hammond in Nanaimo. And this has been brought to you by BC Town Halls 2024.ca. Please go to that website and find out where your local town hall is coming to you. And if there isn't one coming to you, please reach out through the website, through their contact, and get one started. And you heard from Shirley tonight. Anyone can do this. They give you all the resources right there. And I don't mean they tell you who the people are that you'll connect with, but they show you how to connect with them. Yeah, it's all there. Go to the website and get your own town hall started up and somebody will come and do video, and somebody will come and speak, and someone will moderate, and the public will get educated, and we'll be able to do something. And here's my "Together We Are Free" t-shirt, and that's what it is for me. We need to work together. Okay, love to you all. Storm Rider News signing out. Yeah, it's gonna work. Oh, I'm good. I need to do this part myself so that I wrap it up the way I like it and I know where it all is.